So we are going to get started. I hope everyone can hear me and see me, hopefully. Welcome to the President's Sustainability Research Fellowship final presentations. We're so happy to have so many of you join us. My name is Kyle Richmond Crossett. I am a 2019 alum of Swarthmore College and right now serving in the Office of Sustainability and the Lang Center as a Sustainability and Engaged Scholarship Fellow. I'll be serving as a sort of virtual Master of Ceremonies for today's event. Before we kick things off, I just wanted to say two quick logistical notes. First, this event is being recorded and will be available online a few days after the event. So if you have friends or colleagues who missed this event, please let them know that it will be available, and I will send out a link via email with the recording when it's available. And second, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, compliments, feel free to use the built-in question and answer tool that's available in your window, in your Zoom window. I'll talk a little bit more about feedback and questions for our fellows during their presentations in a little bit, but for now, just know that the question and answer tool is being used and monitored by my colleagues. With that, I'd love to start our presentations, and first I'll turn it over to Kar Everbach, who is the chair of the Environmental Studies program and a co-instructor of the PSRF program. He's going to say a few words. Kar?
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. As Kyle said, I'm the coordinator of the Environmental Studies program and a co-teacher of this year's President's Sustainability Research Program. I've really enjoyed working with these young people this year. The Presidential Sustainability Research Fellowship, PSRF, is the best vehicle I've found for students to flourish and to be the best they can be and to have the greatest effect on the world. These students and their work are vital to all of our futures and the reason for environmental studies, and for that matter, for Swarthmore College itself. Now I'd like to introduce Chuck Gentlemoon Demund, the ceremonial chief of the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania.
Medashina Tagashka Nipahum, Elon Yuname Lenape Walk. Greetings. My name is Chuck Gentlemoon. I'm ceremonial chief of the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania. I am of the Unami clan, which is also known as the Turtle Clan. I want to thank Swarthmore College for inviting me here to say opening words for this presentation. And I want to mention that although we're living in a new time, in a new age where we come together in different ways than we're used to, understand and be thankful that Mother Earth has a chance to heal herself now. The carbon footprint is much lower. We've slowed down. We've taken account for some of the things that we've done. And hopefully our leadership will lead us into a new way, a new day, and a new age to where we can go back to the ancient ways and learn how to take care of our mother, the earth, and all our relations in a good way. I want to thank the students for putting in the hard work all year of learning the connection between all our relatives and the two-leggeds, us little ones that walk the earth. I will now say an opening prayer in Lenape. I want to thank everybody and acknowledge our ancestors that walked here before us and left this place in a good way. We are the host tribe of this area. We say thank you for being honored as such. This will be in the dialect of the Unami people, the Lenape people, the Unami dialect. I will say the words and then give you a translation in English. Kisla Manito, Keshela Mukong, Awin Lechi when the band of Manik Newa Kishkong. Get the Maktume, Si Me the Ongaukan. Creator, Grandfather, Sacred and Holy Father, Creator of the universe. We ask that you look upon us, your little ones here, the two-leggeds that come together this day, and have pity. Wanishi, Wanisha Likya, Makumsa Akuma Inkne Wakishkan. We say thank you for the grandfathers and grandmothers of the four directions, grandfathers and grandmothers of the four seasons. Wanishi. Makumsa Opanyawan, Wakamalani Manitou. Geta Maktume, Si Me the old Alaka. Grandfathers of the East, place of sunrise in springtime where the eagle spirits fly from. We ask that you look upon us and help us. Wanishi, for all you do, we are grateful. Kuma Shawanawak, Makumsa Tiende. Geta Maktume, Si Me the old Alaka. Grandmother of the South, place of summertime and strong growth, the place we always face, the place where grandfather fire comes from to help warm the earth for everything to grow. For all you do, we are grateful. Wanishi. Wakumsa, Yeholi Wishka, Bakwaya, Geta Maktume, Si Me the old Gawakan. Grandfathers of the West, place of the sunset in the fall season, place where the thunder people come from and our ancestors walk to. For all that you do, we are grateful. Wanishi. Wakumsa, Luanyawan, Kunskahans, Geta Maktume, Si Me the old Gawakan. Grandfathers of the North, place of the long white-haired elders, place where Snowboy comes from to lay the blanket of white. For all that you do, we are grateful. Wanishi. Manitawakonsi Makumsakan, leaving no lank and may nanuk. No man ashel when may no poquink, si po so kink up by kink willy hot kink. Get the Maktume, si me the old Gawakan. Wanishi. Spirits of all living things that we see and don't see, what we know and don't know. Spirits of the earth, air, fire, and water, and all the living things around us. For all that you do, we are grateful. Wanishi. Wanisha Likak, Makumsa Nano Bushok Messing Halakong. Anisha Likak, Jesus Christ. We say thank you, Creator, for the teachers and elders long ago. For Nanabush, who brought back the earth after the great flood and gave us our pipe and taught us our ceremonies. Me sing Halakong, keeper of the woodland creatures, the ones we pray to before the hunt. And we say thank you, Creator, for Jesus, who came along later with the people from across the water and taught us new ways. Wanishi. Wanisha Lika Kahasun Nakin. Kahari Nuki Shoka Kuma Nipahum Alakong. So thank you for our Mother the Earth, who provides for us and gives us everything we need. For the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the universe. We are grateful. Wanishi. Wanisha Lika Kitok Okaksina. Awahela Okmeshiton. Namis Okako. We say thank you for the wingeds, the four-leggeds, the fish people, the creepy crawlers, the plants, the trees, the grandfathers. For all that we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. For the things we feel from our hearts, we say thank you, Creator. Wanishi. Wanisha Lika, Lelekima Yawet. Anishi. Anisha Lika, Walika Ishka. Oh. Wanishi. We say thank you, Creator, for the breath of life and for this good day, for us all coming together to help learn new ways to take care of our environment and the earth. And I wish everybody the best. And once again, I want to thank Swarthmore College for inviting me to say an opening few words here. And remember, as we go forward, everything begins and ends with Creator. Therefore, if this is part of His dream, part of His vision, so as you take this day forward and you remember the things that are said by myself and by others, please take them forward and share with others to know that we walk in a good way, we walk a good path, that we try to take care of all our relations, and we do what our assignments are here on this earth as two-leggeds to take care of everybody else, because we're all just a small part of this universe. Aho. Wanishi.
Thank you so much, Chuck and Carr, for those lovely introductions and welcoming messages. I'd now like to briefly go over the agenda for today, and just so that you know what we're doing before we get into it. So first, we will be doing several introductions to PSRF, and that will be followed by one of our favorite alums, Peter Jacquet, who is our Sustainability Stage Alumni Coordinator, talking about our alumni engagement program that's affiliated with PSRF, followed by sets of PSRF Fellow presentations. We have 3 sets. Each will last about 45 minutes. The first is centered around integrating sustainability. And after the first set, we'll have an exclusive first look at a short film produced by Devin Walls, a Chester resident, entrepreneur, and artist about a March trip to Hawaii that was attended by students, faculty, staff, and Chester community partners. That will be followed by our second set of PSRF presentations that are loosely centered around campus systems. Next, after that, we'll have a second interlude of sorts. Lizabeth Drake, my colleague and our climate action manager, will give an update about some of the things that have happened recently and will happen in the near-term future around campus sustainability and systems on campus. That will be followed by our third set of PSRF presentations centered on transforming campus and community. And finally, I'm really excited, we're going to have a closing keynote by Kamala Enos, who is the Director of Social Enterprise at the University of Hawaii. So it's quite an agenda. We hope you can stick around for as much of it as possible. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ed Rowe, the Chief of Staff in the Office of the President, to say a few words. Ed?
Thanks, Kyle, and good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of President Smith, I'm pleased to welcome you. As Kyle said, it's the 4th annual President's Sustainability Research Fellowship Program final presentations. When I returned to the college about 2 years ago, I was struck by the ways in which the PSRF program really lives into Swarthmore's mission to make the world a better place by preparing our students to go out and make a difference in it. When I think about the power of the liberal arts to tackle the greatest challenges of society, and I can't frankly think of any better example of interdisciplinary complex challenges than those that are presented by global climate change. So the intellectual rigor for which Swarthmore is known combines with the practical experience that's offered by the faculty and staff mentors in the program, and it's really rewarding to everybody involved. So you'll hear about a number of projects today, students who have worked with faculty to integrate sustainability into their curricula, a brand new Climate Essentials course that in its first year had over 40 participants. Very cool, and yes, Atticus, you should be smiling about that. And also efforts to reimagine zero waste and climate justice, or environmental justice at Swarthmore. None of you will be surprised that all of the students you hear from today are smart. That's what Swarthmore students are. They're also passionate, dedicated, strategic, and I think in this time of a global pandemic, we all need a little bit of hope, and I think that you'll walk away feeling more hopeful about the future of our planet after hearing from these students. So thank you all for being here today.
Thanks so much, Ed. Next up, I'd like to introduce Ben Berger. He's a professor of political science at Swarthmore, also currently serving as executive director for the Lang Center for Civic and Social Responsibility. Ben?
Thanks, Kyle, and thanks, Ed, to those great comments. I really want to echo everything, Ed, that you put out there. I don't think I could have put it any better. PSRF is one of the programs of which I, and I think many others, are most proud and yet also most eager to see grow and evolve with many voices to help them to grow. It is a terrific example of what we call engaged scholarship. We take that term from Ernest Boyer, who in the 1990s kind of coined that term to mean, and I'm paraphrasing here, turning the resources of higher education towards our most pressing ethical, political, civic, economic, social problems. What we like to add to Boyer's vision is the importance of not only turning the resources of higher ed toward those problems, but doing so in partnership, recognizing ourselves as part of an ecosystem, as part of an environment in which we have fabulous types of knowledge and expertise here, but they're not the only types of knowledge and expertise. And we've been trying over the last few years to forge within PSRF better and better partnerships with folks with great knowledge, insight, expertise who reside outside the academy. And you're going to see some of that emerging today. We want to have more of that in the future. We want more insight, more voices from others to help us shape it in that way. One of the great things about PSRF too, I think, is that it takes this term, co-curricular, which has become a buzzword in higher education, and it's often used and seldom really understood. It means somehow relating to the curriculum. It's often used for things that I would regard as extracurricular, things that aren't in the curriculum. But PSRF actually takes co-curricular seriously, because what we do is we have a class that's taught by faculty and staff experts, and we join that with a paid internship. And the importance of being paid is manifold, but among other things, it ensures that we are inclusive, because there are those who otherwise might not be able to do an unpaid internship because they need to earn money during the semester. So it allows all to be able to participate and be compensated for their time. So it merges the class with that paid internship, which would otherwise be extracurricular, but because of the mentoring that happens, faculty mentoring and staff mentoring, we're able to join that internship meaningfully to the curriculum and thus make it co-curricular, not simply extracurricular. We're also able to recognize through this program something that I think we all know in our heart of hearts, but doesn't often go spoken enough and doesn't go shown enough, and that is the ways in which knowledge resides in many places. It resides in our administration and staff. It resides in community partners. By having multiple people contribute to students' education, multiple voices in the equation to figure out where we are going to go on this earth and beyond, we're trying to model what often is, again, spoken as an ideal in higher ed, but too seldom actually enacted. So I'm really proud of PSRF, so proud of the students and the faculty and the community and staff and administration mentors who are going to take part in today's program. And above all, we want to hear from voices to help us make this a better and better program into the future. I want you to introduce now a friend and colleague who has been at the heart of this program since its inception, and that's Aurora Winslade. Aurora, take it over.
Thanks, Ben. I fondly remember the very first time that I met you, Ben, is when you came to my office, and I remember sitting with you and talking about this idea for PSRF and saying, wouldn't it be cool if at some point we could start a program where we'd have students matched with faculty and staff to solve specific sustainability challenges, and where there'd be a classroom component and a research component, but there'd also be this active partnership with mentors and collaborators from across the campus and the community. And I remember this moment where you looked at me and you said, all right, great, let's start right now. and that's when I knew I was in the right place. And you meant it, and it was within, I think, 2 or 3 months that we were recruiting our first cohort. And now here we are about to hear from the 4th cohort of PSRF fellows. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that they're doing. But it's important to recognize that the amazing work that the students are doing, and it really is amazing, they're leading, they're facilitating change, they're acting as project managers. But to be a project manager, to be a change facilitator as they are, means that they're the tip of the iceberg. And they're representing an incredible, diverse, robust community of people that are coming together to make this all happen. And normally when we're in person, it's incredibly obvious because the room is just overflowing with all of the people that have been a part of it. And since we couldn't do that this year, thanks to a quick action on the part of, thank you, Terrence, especially for pulling this together. A little taste, this is by no means everyone, but of course you all are going to see the students in just a moment. But it's not just the students, there's the course facilitators, the teaching team who make it possible to come together twice each week. But it's not just the teaching team, it's the mentors who are meeting weekly with the students and helping support them. And then the project board members who are meeting about every month with the students, and the faculty advisors who are meeting to help advise on the projects. And then there's the sustainability stages, the alumni and sometimes community members who advise, and then project partners, both from the community and across the campus, This is by no means everyone. This is probably close to half of the people who are actively involved in these projects over the course of the year. This is a network and a growing network of people who are envisioning together how we're going to change our community and build over time. And one of the unique aspects of this is that some of these projects, like the Crumwoods Fellowship, have been going on since year one, building on more than a decade of the Crumwoods Stewardship Committee and building towards a future. The first year of the PSRF Fellowship, part of what happened was contributing to the launch of a 10-year Crumwoods Stewardship and Restoration Plan, and now PSRF Fellows are helping implement that. So we are able to have the students take long-term views and really build that out over time. It's an inspiring program, and I know what you're really here to do is hear from the students. So welcome again, and we're excited to present this program to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aurora. With that said, I wanted, just before we get to our presentations from our fellows, I want to say a special hello to alumni and friends of the college. Thank you so much for joining. I know virtual presentations definitely have their drawbacks, but we have been able to reach a much larger audience this time, including all of you. So thank you for tuning in. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce Peter Jacquet, an alum currently serving as the coordinator for the Sustainability Sages program, to just tell you a little bit more about this part of PSRF. Peter?
There we go. Thank you, Kyle. I've been really excited about the opportunity to work with the sustainability folks. And it was maybe about 4 years ago, I was on the Alumni Council and had a serendipitous lunch meeting with Aurora. And she told me all about the PSRF program. And one of the things that she said was that on the projects that the students wanted to work on, oftentimes there were expertise that the faculty had or the staff had, but sometimes there was projects that the students were working on that was in an area that there was really no on-campus expertise. And wouldn't it be nice if we had some alums who might be able to participate in the program? At the same time, I had been working on the Alumni Council with a bunch of alums who are very interested in sustainability. And what we discovered, maybe on reflection not too surprisingly, is that the college is not particularly interested in getting unsolicited advice from alumni. But the college is really interested in helping students. And so there's a connection here that alums can work with students on projects that the students are focused on, and through that they can perhaps have an influence on the way the college goes. And I've seen this in at least 2 or 3 areas. Plus, it's really cool to work with these students. It's really rewarding. It's a fabulous opportunity. And we can really see how the college is moving in, I think, the right direction. So I'd encourage anybody who's interested in sustainability, has some expertise that they might be able to contribute. Anyone that you know, if you're already a SAGE, but you know someone who has some expertise in the sustainability area who is not currently engaged with us, let's sign them up. Because it's, as I said, a fabulous opportunity, and I've enjoyed it tremendously.
Thank you so much, Peter. Great. Okay, last thing before we jump into what you've all been waiting for. I'd like to strongly encourage all of you to give feedback and ask questions during our presentations by PSRF Fellows. As I think I mentioned before, after the end of each set of presentations, we'll have a short question and answer session for those fellows. If you'd like to ask a question to any fellow, please use the question and answer tool. that's embedded in the Zoom webinar application. And please use the format question for the person's name or the project, just so that we can easily categorize your question. Similarly, we would really appreciate feedback. I know all of these PSRF fellows have been working very hard on these presentations, but it's great to hear both positive feedback and improvables. So if you would like to do that, and we'd really encourage that, please just use the same question and answer tool with a slightly different format, feedback for the person's name or the project. Great, and I will make a couple of reminders about this throughout the presentation for folks joining in, but it's best to get off to a good start with our first presentation. Unfortunately, and this is quite a last minute change, but Rachel, who has done incredible work for us, has fallen ill and is not able to start us off by talking about curriculum. Fortunately, Car Everbach, who you just heard from, will be able to kind of give you a brief overview of the presentation and the work that Rachel has done. But I know for myself personally, I'm really sad that Rachel has been unable to join us today. Car?
Yes, and all I will say is that Rachel's project was to focus on infusing sustainability across Swarthmore's curriculum. And she did this throughout the year in many ways, including facilitating a faculty sustainability workshop with an outside presenter, facilitator to help faculty across a huge range of departments who are not now necessarily connected with environmental studies or other connections, think about what sustainability is in the context of their disciplines, and to create new ideas for courses or modules in courses that could do that. Rachel also was extremely productive in helping us map the existing curricular structure, finding out where students learn about sustainability issues, and directing us in ways that are going to be lasting into the future, because this is a problem, this is a situation, whether it's global climate change, whether it's the COVID-19 pandemic we're experiencing now, there's so many elements in which the structure of our curriculum needs to address the pressing changes the world has. And the best way to do that is to have student guidance input and work as partners with faculty. So I thank Rachel for her hard work, and I've been her project mentor during much of this. She has a list here of people who helped and attended and explored. I want to thank her, and I'm sorry that she's not here to be able to present this in person. Rachel, I hope you're listening and or seeing this later on video. We miss you, but get well soon.
Thanks, Car. Next up, we have Jasmine, class of 2020, who will be telling us about her project focused on sustainability tracking and reporting. Rachel, take it away.
Cool, thanks Kyle. Hi everybody, welcome to my presentation. My name is Jasmine and I'm the PSRF for STARS, or the Sustainability Tracking Assessment and Rating System. So STARS can be kind of thought of as like a test on steroids. So the test takers are colleges around the world. The grades are these like designations from bronze to platinum. Their responses and results are posted for everybody to see and access to encourage collaboration, and the test sometimes, in our case, takes a whole academic year to complete. So, next slide. SWAT has participated in STARS since 2011, but received our first formal rating in 2017, completed by Patrick Houston and Bridget Scott. These were two fellows in the inaugural PSRF class, and they did a lot of groundwork to make this happen. And so since each school is required to renew their submission for it to be valid every 3 years, my PSRF project was to revisit this report and publish a new version this spring, which is what I did. So with Patrick and Bridget's efforts, SWAT did a great job on our 2017 report, receiving a total of 58 points for a silver rating, which we see to be on par with the aggregated performance of some of our peer institutions, the top 20 liberal arts colleges, for instance, as displayed in this graph. So for Patrick and Bridget, as well as myself, the data collection process is super rigorous, and this is just a little screenshot of what my process looked like. Don't bother to read it because it's very convoluted at parts. So the STARS report comprises of about 70 credits and probably over 700 data fields. So that required creating like a master list of people who could help us with this process. And from there, I sent out numerous emails, had countless great in-person meetings, and basically tried to learn everything there was to learn about the college, like institutionally, in order to get the data in on time. This was, needless to say, a very stressful experience, but I had a lot of support in this process. But having to familiarize myself with the baseline set by Patrick and Bridget and trying to capture everything that's changed since 2017 was quite the monumental task. So the entire process is summarized here, in addition to a screenshot of how the online reporting tool looks like. And then Cara and I sat together on March 6th, the day before spring break, and also what turned out to be our last day together on campus to submit our 2020 report. So from the comfort of our own homes, we've then received draft revisions on April 16th to come up with a provisional score and also address some of the feedback that were given to us by the ASHE STARS staff. And we're still in the process of making these revisions so that we can submit for a formal rating. So the end result is as follows. The hope is always to see improvement in longitudinal reports like this, which has certainly happened, but isn't always captured in a straightforward score. So while this is absolutely subject to change with our second round of revisions, Swarthmore ended up scoring a total of 54 points this time around, which puts us at another silver rating. But here are some of my thoughts. In the 2020 report, there were several areas to both celebrate and scrutinize. To explain a few, we boosted our scores on the undergraduate program and employee educators program since we formally established an environmental studies major and the sustainability advocates program since the 2017 report. Our performance on other credits have decreased, however, sometimes for reasons outside of our control. In terms of the academic courses credits, more students are now majoring in CS and other departments that don't have a learning outcome or departmental definition of sustainability. However, this can be changed. And then same for water use, perhaps because of the increase in new building square footage relative to campus population, this number also fluctuates. And then other things to note are that in new versions of STARS that they publish and they frequently update, there are increased score values for scores that we don't necessarily change our personal performance on, but the weightings do change. And so, for instance, areas like sustainable investment do get more weighting for this time around as opposed to our 2017 report. So the hard part is, Bridget and Patrick made very similar recommendations that were super well received 3 years ago, but during the 3 years between my project and theirs, a lot of momentum and institutional memory was lost. So rather than focusing on like the nitpicking, like where exactly should we be getting points that we don't, the focus, I think on the whole, should be on developing commitments that we can stick to. So by turning this into a more continuous process, which is already in the works, as there will be a new PSRF coming in to pass the torch onto, and also just creating committees or just more like measurable commitments that we actually revisit more than 3 years at a time, that could help us like avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we fell into this time around. So my experience as a PSRF has definitely been both challenging and rewarding. I did mention before, like the whole process of having to relearn this program from scratch and to like take on as much information as I could about the school in my very limited time was a pretty big challenge, but I was also able to meet and collaborate with people from all different departments on campus that I probably wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And this project also definitely gave me a greater appreciation for all the groundwork necessary to make institutional change actually happen. So thank you everybody for listening to this presentation, and particularly these people who have made this project possible in so many various ways.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for that wonderful presentation. You're going to hear me say this a lot, but please send Jasmine feedback questions in the question and answer tool. Next up, we're going to hear from Naseba, class of 2021. Last year, Naseba completed the PSRF program as a fellow, and this year she's back in the senior fellow role, talking about plug load pilots. Naseba, take it away.
Hello. As Kyle said, my name is Naseba, and I've been working with PSRF for quite a while now. I've spent my time with the carbon charge, and I've been thinking about how we can more meaningfully engage with our goals of carbon neutrality. Specifically, I've been working on an initiative to reduce the amount of electricity we use in our office spaces and engage members of our community in a dialogue of conservation. So we've been investigating doing this with a device called plug load meters. These devices essentially record the amount of electricity that runs through them every 15 seconds or so. They're about fist-sized devices that plug directly into electrical sockets, and you plug your devices into them as you normally would. What makes these special though is their capability to be programmed on and off during certain times of the day. So this means when a space is unoccupied, like at night, these devices can be programmed to stop unneeded electrical draw. These schedules are specific to each plug, so there's the potential to individualize schedules. This is part of a three-part system. So as you can see here, the information is all collected on site and is sent to what we call a gateway. Gateways are basically how the plugs, gateways are basically the communication point where all that information is collected. And then it's shot off to our network, which is a cloud-based service that provides information on how the plugs are doing and their energy use in a web interface. So this first year was largely talking to campus community members about the pilot program and getting interest in being a volunteer. We ended up actually having more interest in the pilot program than we had the capacity to fulfill at the moment. So we ended up narrowing it down to these office spaces. We also worked closely with choosing Sustained Solutions and IBIS Networks as our contractors who provided the materials and services. And then over the academic year, we worked on running the actual pilot. So this started with installing devices in those respective office spaces. Once they were up and running, we were able to collect a baseline over a few months to get a sense of where people's energy uses were. So as you can see here, this is a typical week for all 120 of our plugs. Most of the energy collected was from typical office objects like your laptop, your chargers, lamps, and those sort of things. So on average, our volunteers tended to spend less than 10 kilowatt hours a week. So after this initial baseline, we were ready to put into place a schedule. So we did a quick survey with our volunteers and we looked at our baseline data and we ended up setting our meters to turn on at 6 a.m., which was the earliest our volunteers came into office, and turn off at 7 p.m., the latest most of our volunteers came into office. So all of the areas that you can see here covered in gray would then be cleared to 0, which is really exciting because this base was around 700 watts at any given moment, which for reference is like running 16 laptops constantly throughout the night. Once the system was up and running, it was wonderful to be able to share access to the results with all of our volunteers through IBIS's web application. So volunteers could check their data as well as their peers' data. Another perk we all had access to was their website's many data analyzers and reports. One of our favorite tools was the visualizer, which you can see here on the side, that allowed us to quickly look at trends and analyze energy use with just a few clicks. We could group people, group machine types, look at various timestamps, and so much more. Having access to this data also helped us spot anomalies, such as this one at the bottom, an outdated computer using way more energy than its companions, which signals a time for replacement. As exciting as this all is, there were a few key drawbacks. For one, we couldn't manage users as well as we wanted. The next level of access under admins gave volunteers the ability to access their relevant plugs and turn on their devices when needed. However, it didn't allow volunteers to schedule their own meters, so that meant we couldn't make schedules as granular or personal as we wanted, hence the overarching schedule from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. that we mentioned earlier. And when anyone wanted to plan a schedule change in advance, they'd have to shoot me an email, which if we were to think about this as a more overarching project, this would not be ideal. Second, accessibility remained a key issue. The last time I presented, I mentioned that the web platform did not meet Swarthmore's ADA standards, and so that meant issues like color contrast and keyboard navigation were barriers. We also faced physical accessibility questions as plugs were placed at hard-to-reach areas at times, which meant volunteers couldn't always physically turn on their devices in an emergency. Both of these things are sort of things we could potentially work with the developer to improve on or think creatively to navigate. However, our biggest barrier at the moment was financing. So looking at the current way things are running at Swarthmore and the price here, which is 6.3 cents per kilowatt hour, the current savings would only pay back the investment in 50 years, not including a yearly maintenance fee. So that last point was kind of what tipped the scale for us and led us to the conclusion that this was not the right time to continue the program. Regardless, we still learned a lot about our current energy use and habits. While this company's service in particular wasn't right for Swarthmore, we are still really interested in other plug load related studies. For example, these devices may not pay back quickly for small draws like laptops, but it helped us find the bigger energy spenders on campus. So rather than metering all of our outlets by focusing on big fish like charging stations, lab equipment, and vending machines, we could target those larger vampire energies and more effectively reduce our energy at a better rate of return. Additionally, members from our CS department are working on developing their own plug load meters to help with computer lab management, and so that's really exciting. And there are so many other learning outcomes that I could touch on, but I'd like to end on a note of community engagement, which is what we started this project on. What I enjoyed most about this project was getting to talk to people and hear how proud they were about switching off their power strips and all their tips and tricks to reducing their energy footprints. And this excitement is so key and what we should continue to highlight. And every time we leave something on or keep something plugged in, we use energy that we didn't necessarily have to. And while our current savings are maybe not financially strong, it's always important to keep a bigger picture in mind. So we're talking about saving a pound of carbon every time we reduce a kilowatt hour. So I encourage everyone to keep on unplugging. And with that, I'd just like to give a thank you to the team that has helped bring this project into fruition, both present and past. And of course, a bigger thank you to all of the volunteers who have made this study possible.
Thanks, Naseba. That was a fantastic presentation. Last but not least, in this set of presentations is Oswaldo, class of 2021, who will be talking about revitalizing sustainable opportunities at Swarthmore. Oswaldo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kyle. Hi, I'm Oswaldo. I use he, him, his pronouns, and my project was entitled Revitalizing Sustainability Opportunities. What inspired this project? Last year, I was a green advisor, which are peer leaders that live in residence halls and help engage students in topics around sustainability, but also help manage our campus-wide compost stream. It was and is an amazing program, but I felt that there was a need to create more programs that engage students who aren't as willing to pursue a year-long internship, especially first years who want to get involved in some other facet. This prompted my interest in the fellowship, and after getting the position, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Hawaii as a kickstart to my PSRF project to attend an environmental retreat in Waianae. I spent 3 days immersed in sustainability work with other passionate young people, which reinforced this idea that we need to not only find more ways for students to get involved, but we also need to think about ways to have deep learning experiences for people to reimagine their views on sustainability and create powerful relationships with others. So my project. It's always been two distinct pieces, which I used to think were separate, but now I see as two pieces of the same puzzle. One is to branch out our opportunities to reach more people and create more involvement, and the other is to set down seeds to create and strengthen existing relationships with people in and out of our community. So let's talk about the first one first. This is the Office of Sustainability, and it has some apples that people can take. These apples include the Green Advisors, which I've already mentioned, Sustainability Advocates, which are staff eco-reps that partner with Green Advisors to implement projects in their departments. We have PSRFs, the program that I'm in, and office interns, which help with different tasks that the office may need. All these apples are really great, but they're kind of high up and require some commitment to go and grab them. So what if we had some apples at the bottom that were a little easier to grab? Or what if they were even easier to grab? Like what if they were on the ground? Even better, what if there was a stand that was giving out these apples to anyone who walked by? That was the goal of these projects, these apples. So that's what I did. I created a proposal to hire student waste experts. Right now, Green Advisors are the only group on campus that sort the compost stream, which has been growing more and more yearly. These waste experts will be able to help the GAs sort our compost stream. They will also help with the yearly waste characterization studies, which are really, really pivotal in understanding what we are doing in our zero waste goals. And most importantly, they will be able to engage with our community during large outdoor events, to talk to our community and teach them about our waste stations and about everything that we're doing. I also created a proposal for a student programming intern. As many of you know, our current program manager is leaving at the end of this year, which is really sad. But through my work, I've also been helping her with things such as documenting lessons for trainings and general support. I've seen just how important it is that the program manager have help in supporting all of the things that we're doing, especially any program manager who may be starting this role next year, and this programming intern would be able to help support that person. Finally, I thought about community engagement. This can mean a lot of different things. One of the biggest recommendations I sent in was reimagining what the Swarthmore ecosphere looks like. The Swarthmore ecosphere is the entirety of environmental groups on campus, from student to staff groups. It's a great resource that doesn't really feel utilized, but can be reignited so that it not only is stronger, but creates action and provides support. Creating action groups and committees within the ecosphere will help groups like Sunrise Movement and the College Coalition Concerning Chester find ways to rally engagement in the work that they're doing. Now, onto the second piece of the puzzle. When thinking about this project, our planning group wasn't really sure what we wanted. We knew we wanted a deep learning experience in Hawaii for students, and we knew we wanted it to be named a Huaka'i, the Hawaiian term for a journey with purpose. Through conversations throughout the year, we learned a couple of things. One, that faculty and staff should definitely be involved for long-lasting relationships to be formed through this experience. And secondly, that we should also be working with partners in Chester so that we can think of ways to create meaningful and transformational work between all of our communities. The first semester, we worked on bringing 3 strong leaders from Hawaii to Swarthmore, Lala, Matt, and Kamu. They came to strengthen relationships, offer teachings to the community, and help in planning our Huaka'i. Then, through loads of planning, in March, we were able to successfully send a group of 14 people to Hawaii for this Huaka'i. Participants learned about farming, indigenous innovation, and so much more. 4 of these participants were also PSRFs, who you'll hear more from later today. I could talk on and on about this experience, but I'll leave that to the film that you'll be watching after our Q&A. After this Huaka'i, we were supposed to think about next steps in sending students to do work in Hawaii over summer, but that was interrupted by COVID-19. This did, however, lead the way to create deeper conversations about the role of fellows in doing work and the role of supporting each other in times of need. I sent in recommendations around this, such as, what should these relationships look like in the immediate and far future? And what immersion experiences should look like in general when considering communities that we're reaching out to and being a part of. So, what did I learn from this experience? The first thing I learned is that it is so crucial to have a plan for whatever work you're doing and then be willing to toss it right out the window almost immediately if things are definitely going to change. As long as you define a purpose to the work that you're doing, the process will always follow, no matter how often that process has to change. Real life work is rough. It changes so rapidly and leaves things really hard to predict. But if you take that turbulence and use it to find new opportunities to do work and to make change, then you are harnessing that energy and creating something really beautiful. I'd like to give a huge thank you to all the people that helped me with my project throughout the year, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Oswaldo. Now is maybe my favorite part of this presentation is the first question and answer session, where you can use the question and answer tool to submit your questions, and we'll have Oswaldo and Jasmine and Nuseba on deck to answer them. So I'm actually going to turn this over to my colleague, Brenna Leary, who will be hosting the question and answer panel. Brenna?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your questions. They're awesome. and thank you to our students for such fabulous presentations. So the first question is for Jasmine. And the question is, do you have an idea about how to establish a standard format for data collection? And if so, what is that?
Sure. So this is something that Cara and I discussed pretty early on into the process, where we realized that just like the time span between each STARS report, and that we had to like do a wholesale like renewal of our entire report was like a pretty large undertaking. And so some ideas that have been floated around, although haven't been expressly implemented because the actual data collection process took so long, were to just like have departments submit like annual updates about their progress like relative to STARS, like existing STARS credits. So to have like, for instance, grounds like do an annual submission in which like we do our very own like proprietary version of STARS, but like using their guidelines. And this, I hope, will be these will be like objectives carried out by the PSRF actually hired to implement some of these recommendations for next year. So we're already like a step ahead of our previous project of like the previous like 2017 to 2020 transition, because we have like an intermediate PSRF to actually facilitate some of the findings from this year.
Awesome, thank you, Jasmine. The next question is from Sabine, and it is for Nuseba. So could you give us a sense of what the nighttime electricity use looked like before you programmed all of the plug meters to 0?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it was around 700 watts for all of our plugs. And it's just typical things like laptops that or computers that are put on to sleep, and so they're drawing a little bit, or your occasional lamps that stay on or are forgotten to stay on. The biggest contributors though in an office space were things like your coffee maker or the water cooler, which continue to run intermittently all day long at pretty decently high wattages, and those sort of things all add up, especially for 3 buildings. But yeah.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Oswaldo from Roderick. And the question is, what would the educational benefits be for a program manager intern?
Yeah, so part of the work that I've been doing with Melissa this year, I can speak specifically. One of those is like trainings for green advisors, but also for incoming students. So with Melissa, I've been thinking about trainings for the green advisors, such as environmental policy and indigenous relationships with indigenous communities, and just sort of communicating climate change, climate anxiety to green advisors, which has also been like with work with other PSRFs. But that work can actually help to educate green advisors who can then educate other students, as well as thinking about ways that we have trainings at orientation for incoming students. I think the giving way for a programming intern makes it so that there's another person that the program manager can talk to about creating programs and creating curriculum to give to the student body, to give to the community. So that just leads the way to having more of those, as you know, you have 2 people saying maybe this is a more important thing to do, or you give space to someone to be able to give a talk in the science center or give a presentation during something, which I think is a really crucial part, is engaging with the community, and something that the programming intern would be doing a lot more of.
Thank you, Oswaldo. The next question is for Rachel/Carr. Could you speak to what the experience was like in those faculty sustainability workshops? Or faculty surprised at how sort of easy it was to integrate sustainability into their curriculum, or was it something a bit different?
I'll take that. So, excuse me. I think most faculty went into this with a kind of a narrow view of sustainability, that it had to do something with nature specifically, or wind power, or some policy issues. And what we all learned through dialogue with each other and with the facilitator was that sustainability is really more of a mindset, and it's really much broader. than we thought. And so it turns out that virtually every faculty member found lots of connections with the courses they already teach and how they view them that connect to sustainability, or could, all that would need to happen is a little bit more of a mindset change. So for instance, one of the important components of sustainability is a just and equitable society. And thinking about the power structures and the way things happen, and imagining and working toward teaching about ways that could be improved is part of sustainability. And so I guess the point of this is that what we really need to do to get away from the horrible problems we have is to cause fundamental transformation in our ways of thinking. And if that's not the job of Swarthmore College, I don't know what is. It's part of its original goal is to make the world a better place by training our students, and the faculty help train the students. And so I think Rachel's work in this, I think, opened up a lot of people to new directions, and those directions will bear fruit in the years to come.
Thank you, Car. The next question is for Jasmine, and it's all about water. So the question is the STARS water criteria based on water intensity or total water use? And to build onto that, how much of the increase in Swarthmore's water use is attributed to potable water versus landscaping and other sort of needs in that category?
Sure. So I guess our water use submission, there's like several fields that go into it, but the most notable increase has been like potable water use per weighted campus user. And that's like an aggregated data point from things we input about like the total full-time equivalent student enrollment number. And then also just like our actual like potable water use, which I'm not like a building systems expert, but I'm assuming has definite relation to like the square footage that we have on campus, since like, I guess like water is, or buildings are pretty like water centric. So like, according to the numbers themselves, like that's where our water use like was most notably different from our 2017 report. But I could definitely circle back and like give you a more nuanced answer based on like the actual like designations of water if I looked into the report a bit more closely.
Awesome, thanks. And we'll go back to Niseba again. Could you, based on the data that you collected through this experiment, would you be able to predict the annual campus-wide energy savings opportunity if we installed plug loads in every space on campus?
Thank you for that question. I think for the most part with the data that we collected, we got a really good sense of what an office would be doing, what an office would be saving, and how much energy that would be. For the most part, it's, on the grand scheme of things, perhaps not the biggest contributor, but as I mentioned, it did help us point out some bigger spaces for energy use. So if we're thinking about our lab equipment, or the one that's on the top of my mind right now is like, for example, with the CS department and their computer labs that tend to use a lot of intensive energy, those are places where a lot of energy could be saved on a wider scale. But I don't have a definite value for what the total savings on campus would be. But there's definitely a lot of potential, and I do know of a lot of outdated things that we're using that perhaps we could bring down with that knowledge.
Great, thank you. And last, but certainly not least, Oswaldo, could you speak a little bit to how your project helped strengthen relationships with our neighbors in Chester?
Yeah, so in the Huaka'i, there were 3 people who went who were from Chester. We had an artist, we had someone who owns a restaurant, and we had someone who works in the school system. These people were really great, and we were able to have a lot of strong conversations about the role of students in supporting these communities, allowing these people to like join in on this experience that was provided by Swarthmore. And I think in a general sense, just paving the way for like sit down time to talk with Hawaii, with Swarthmore, and with Chester about what other like summer opportunities may look like, what sort of online facilitations may look like, what presentations may look like, how to engage students in Chester, how to engage students from Hawaii. So I think it started creating a baseline for these conversations to happen. And I think that that's a really strong first step in expanding these relationships.
Thank you. And while I have you on the line, I have a bonus question for you, Oswaldo. So we know that it costs a lot of carbon to fly to Hawaii. So why are we focusing on partnerships there as opposed to partnerships closer to home?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think when we were first thinking about this project, that was one of the first things that we thought of, and it's always been something that we've considered, is the sort of carbon output that this trip cost. And when thinking about how this may look in the future, one thing that we're thinking about, especially given the sort of how things have changed due to the global pandemic, we've realized that online facilitations, online communication, and online engagement is very much an opportunity. So if we have these relationships online, as opposed to always flying over and doing things in person, they can be just as powerful. The reason that Hawaii is a special place is because it's locked by the ocean. So people in Hawaii have always had this different idea about sustainability and idea about engagement with land. And that's something that we don't have at Swarthmore, which is one of the biggest reasons that engagement with people from there is really important to understand how we can shift our own frameworks to think about sustainability, not just as an afterthought, but as one of the central pieces to our decision making. And the amazing people that we've met have also have also been able to find relationships and things that they can get out of Swarthmore and out of Chester. So if we consider online engagement as equally as powerful as in-person engagement, then we may not always have to worry about these really heavy carbon intensive programming, like programs that send people to different places.
Awesome, thank you so much. And just as a note to everybody, the students can also see any questions that you dropped in the Q&A box, and they can type answers to you directly after this Q&A session is over. So if you didn't get your question answered, don't worry, we'll get some answers to you very shortly.
Thank you so much, Brenna, and thanks to our panelists for answering those, I think, really insightful questions. Before we move on to our next set of presentations, as I mentioned before, we have an exclusive first look at a film produced by Devin Walls, a Chester-based artist and entrepreneur. The film is a peek into the trip that Oswaldo walked you through just a few minutes ago. But to introduce the video and the person, I'd like to welcome back to our virtual stage, Ben Berger, the Executive Director of the Lang Center. Ben?
Great, thanks so much, Kyle. Ideally, we would actually have creators of the film present, but they're busy working today because they're helping to hold down a lot of important things in their community. So I'm just, as a proxy, going to say a few words. Although I couldn't have done anywhere near as good a job about describing not only the overview of Hawaii, but also the care and thought that's gone into mulling how best to create partnerships, how to do it carefully without a waste of carbon, why Hawaii, why partnerships like Chester. You did a terrific job, Oswaldo, in explaining those things. I'll just add, first of all, this film is part of a larger project that was undertaken by Devin Walls, who was an artist and a community developer, and very much the heart of a movement in Chester to promote local ownership, so that when property values rise, it's local people who've been residents for a long time who not only have voices there, but have a stake in the community and aren't driven out, as so often happens with urban renewal. He's at the center of that, alongside some other artist partners who have bought and run art galleries and different projects in this area in what's called Overtown Chester. So this collaborative is known as the Overtown Chester Artists Collaborative. Includes other artists such as Kenya Abdul Hadi, Kenny Hunt, Linwood L. Ward, and Devin Walls, who all own space in that area, as well as Brothers Restaurant and Juice Bar, which is, as well as being a health restaurant, that's going to be emerging as a favorite among our students as well. They're getting into some of the same things that our Hawaii partners have long been into, like the importance of growing food locally, of sustainability efforts as well. So Devin, unbidden, is an artist. He creates, while he was on this trip with us, he started filming. And before we knew it, he was staying up all night, editing, cutting, taking more footage. He's got a lot of phenomenal footage. This is just a very, very short snippet overview into some of the things that we did with our partners at Ma'o Organic Farms, our partners at the University of Hawaii, and also partners who work with city and county government in Hawaii. We have a lot of those connections because of Aurora Winslade's deep, long-standing partnerships with and work relationships with people in Hawaii. One of the reasons why we also decided it was important to bring with us our community partners, and some very important partners were not able to make it at the last minute for reasons including concerns over the emerging pandemic. Those include Pamela Boyce-Sims, who's been a vital partner for us, who operates the QEW, or Quaker Earth Care Witness African Diaspora Network, and has worked with students as part of our Chester semester program, doing issues relating to sustainability in Chester as well. Also, Shay Duncan Smith, Assistant Vice President at the college and Dean of Inclusive Excellence and Community Development, was not able to come with. Giovanna DeCuro, a Professor of Environmental Studies, who has done path-breaking work in community engaged scholarship in the Philadelphia area with Serenity Solar, was going to come with us, and we hope will make a future trip, as well as Professor Saad Achan, who has done mind-blowing work that has changed lives of students with embedded study with his peace and conflict studies courses. They were not able to come. We hope to bring them with in the future. But the voices that you are going to see, our community partners in Chester, they resonated, they connected with our Hawaii partners when Hawaii partners came to visit our campus in the late fall, because they found that a number of issues that they each faced were similar. Issues of folks who were longstanding residents of an area being dispossessed from the land, not owning the land, not controlling the future of their own communities. Issues of food insecurity amidst plenty. Issues of, on the positive side, of art being able to express community voices and to be a leader at the edge of change. There was great connection. We thought we've got to help to deepen this connection. And we quickly made arrangements to bring with some of our partners, which includes Devin Walls and Aaliyah Alamin, as well as Reverend Julian Wilkinson, who heads up Chester Eastside Incorporated, which has been a long-time partner in Chester education. So all of us were there. It was an intensive period working the earth, talking to spiritual local leaders, talking to scientists, figuring out ways we might, as Oswaldo said, be able to not simply go back and forth all the time, but deepen relationships, put down roots so that we could then do things remotely much of the time, and possibly even establish an exchange program, something like study abroad, although Hawaii is technically part of the United States, so that our students might study at the University of Hawaii, but do a remote placement with Ma'o Farms, for example. And some of their students might come here and experience what Swarthmore has to offer in terms of the engaged liberal arts. That's just prefatory remarks. This film speaks for itself and lets others speak. We look forward to seeing much more of this footage in the future when Devin makes it available to the college. We're working on an arrangement with him. But I just want to welcome you to enjoy with me seeing and feeling really the presence of being there. Because I was there just a month and a half ago. The world's a very different place right now. But I hope you get a sense of the possibility, the life-changing experience, and having put down roots, the ability to do some things remotely towards the future. Want to cue the film then, Kyle? Oh, by the way, while you're doing that, there you go. Okay, super.
Talk to me about what you're doing right now and the experience, how it feels. I guess what Mao means. is the only word I can think of is legacy.
So crazy. This land, like the soil is like, it's not at all like the soil in Swarthmore. It's like so sticky. It's so cool.
I'm weeding right now. I'm a little bit messy. Actually grew up weeding at a very smaller scale version of this in Springfield, Massachusetts, called Gardening the Community. Right now, honestly, what I'm mostly thinking about is how different the soil is here.
I'm thinking about how my dad was able to work in strawberry fields for like in like sun in California, and I'm just like, I don't know how my dad did it, and I'm just thinking about like this whole complex of like putting. It's just weird. I wonder how like I know like the people here at mom love it, and I don't think have the same like trauma and oppression of other people in fields and like bending over and like doing this. I guess, but I'm just thinking about how mostly just like how my dad did it.
So you think about family greatness.
I've never felt soil like
As my back hurts, I'm like, my dad is like wow.
Oh no, I feel like I'm at home at my farm, like just like a peace and just weeding or being with the plants that I'm getting right now. And I don't know, it's really just getting in the dirt and I don't know, feeling part of it, working with it.
Yeah. Look like he's cheating. He has a knife.
He's cheating.
Yes, I am.
These roots are so hard to get up.
That home field advantage.
Yeah.
We come out to help weed the field. It's a lot of work going on right now, but it's a lot of fun. One of the main things that everybody keeps saying is how rich the soil is, how moist it is, and the mineral content in the soil. And Kamu just let us know that we're in the center of an old volcano, and a lot of the stuff that's in there is lava and lava rocks. And all the minerals are going into the food. This organic farm is doing beautiful work. It employs people from the community. It houses people from the community. It gives people education, schooling, and sends a lot of people to college here from the farm. So this concept right here is so amazing. And I'm just glad that we could be a part of it, man. It's very important work that the Alang Center is doing, taking people from our communities and then planting them in other communities. It's just a beautiful thing.
And where we're looking to have more partnerships between the college and the community. Amazing student leaders who've been committed this whole year to doing sustainability and social justice work on campus, and staff members who are coming from the college as well. And part of what we're doing here is building our collective vision of what does it look like to do community engaged work at the intersections of social justice, sustainability, and community engagement.
The quickest way that I can think about it is that the guys who started it, Gary and Kukui, they kind of saw all of these problems that existed in our community, and they kind of like, I guess, you know, at some point it clicked that you could address all of these problems through farming. So it's like, you know, what we're doing, we're creating organic produce to feed to a community that has higher rates of, you know, heart disease or diabetes, different cancers and stuff like that. We're providing jobs to people in the local community so that they don't have to go and work construction. That's like the #1 job, or tourism, you know, or these kinds of businesses where the money is not being circulated back into the community, it's being taken away outside. And we're working with youth, we're sending them to college, and covering their tuition for people who might otherwise not be able to afford to go to college.
I can't, I feel so close. It's as though we could just walk up and touch. It's gorgeous, breathtaking.
As a chef, we take a lot from the earth, like just in general, because of the job that we have. We have to constantly churn out food at an unsustainable rate. And oftentimes we don't get the opportunity to really put everything back into the earth that we took out. When you're just chopping, when you're cooking, you don't think about how much work it takes to go into making that product. So I'm definitely gonna take that home with me and just be more appreciative of the resources that I have and the people who make those resources possible.
The way that the University of Hawaii is partnering with Maui Farm and the young people there and the way they're learning to live their lives, manage a farm, do good things for the earth, kind of retake their land and combine that with traditional scholarship is phenomenal. And so our definition expanded what engaged scholarship looks like because it was being modeled by phenomenal community partners. And we came here, some professors, some students, and some community partners from Chester, all of whom are experienced working together. But we haven't seen anything like this before. It was just tremendous. So we're going to go home inspired by saying to ourselves, that's how they do it here. How can we take some of that back?
What I hope I can bring to this group over the next week is a little bit of loving disruption to our usual understanding of self and our relationship to the rest of the world.
So, you know, again,
Great. I hope you all enjoyed that film. I was blown away. Thank you so much to Devin for, I think, really fantastic recording and producing and directing skills. So before we move on to our next set of presentations, I'd just like to again remind you, please engage with our fellows, ask them questions, provide feedback, and you can do both using the question and answer tool embedded in the webinar application. So next up is a group of presentations loosely focused on campus systems. And first is Samantha, a class of 2022, who will talk to us about her project focused on sustainable food and dining. Sam, take it away.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So my project this year was working on sustainable food and dining. And so I plan to major both in political science and peace and conflict studies. And from that, I've always had this interest in environmental sustainability, and that passion's always been there. So I thought, why not get involved in PSRF? It's an incredible way to engage with the community. And with that, I got my project, and overall, it is this initiative to replace our current compostables with a reusable container. And it has this dual-pronged mission. So first, primarily to avoid and reduce waste, and then to implement this pilot program. So that's this tangible mission. But overall, we have to take this step back and look at the why. So why are we trying to avoid and reduce waste? Why is this implementation of this pilot program so important? And it really looks at how do we redefine or rethink what we see and how we interact with waste. And taking this step back is really important. And I think that this project, implementing a reusable takeout container program, did a great job of opening the door to how we think about waste. So kind of a recap, to the left is a picture of the containers that we use for the pilot program. And then the chart to the right is kind of a way to conceptualize what this exchange process is like with students. It can be thought more like a library book exchange. Like that's a really good way to visualize it. And it was all through the one card system that the participant students had, and basically just had their card swiped, took the reusable container, filled it up, used it like normal, and then they could return the container, swipe for a new clean one, or go in for a regular eat-in meal. And so with this program, I got an overwhelmingly positive response from the student body. I had students coming up to me oh my gosh, how do I get involved? This is amazing. Going up to other PSRFs, like specifically Oswaldo, he's telling me, oh my goodness, all these students are coming up to me like they want to get involved. And I mean, I think that is a really incredible way to see how your project and how you can directly impact a community, especially your peers, and really seeing that spark and how getting involved in a project like this, like seeing that change, I think is really powerful. And the response was really positive. The students really embraced this initiative. Mostly everyone really loved the hard plastic. The compostables tend to disintegrate. They aren't very leak proof. And with that, like, I could just say the project was a complete success. It was all positive. And I was able to write this article for the Phoenix, and it got a really good response. Just all the students, they want to see more of this. They want to see how they can get involved. We were able to start the pilot with 50 participants, but because of this overwhelmingly positive response, I was able to add 14 more to see how much this pilot could support. And like with that, it ran really smoothly. So that was really great to see. And then some of the feedback we got of how we could improve our process was first kind of streamline our one card system. So some of the students just had some technical issues, which just working with the one card office and Anthony Condo specifically, like that could easily be fixed. Also, one of the more popular demands or suggestions was to have more than one drop site to have these students drop off their soiled containers. So currently we only have one, which is at Sharples. And so that would be interesting to see if we could have some at other central locations like McCabe, Cy, Colberg. That would be really good to look into. So overall, these next steps streamline the one card system and have other options for drop-offs. And we want to see if we can expand the program for more participants. Seeing how smoothly and efficiently the program ran, we had about 64 students with about 200 containers. So that exchange process, we were kind of trying to see how many students could we support with just this amount of containers. And we're probably going to assume that we could add about up to 100 students with our 200 containers for it to run smoothly. So that's what we're looking to expand to in the future. Right now, we wouldn't be able to support a program that would be catered to the entire student body simply because our dining hall would not be able to support that, the washing, storing, drying of the containers. Like that wouldn't be feasible. But luckily, in a few years, we'll be getting our new dining hall. I don't know if any of us will be here to see it, but that will most certainly be catered to have a complete reusable container program, most likely upgrade to other reusable ware like utensils, cups, bowls. That's what we're looking to do, and that's really exciting. And then lastly, I just want to thank all of my project supporters. This project has been so positive. I've learned a lot, and the best part about it was just seeing how interacting with students, faculty, and other staff, like having these interactions that are so positive, getting this feedback and seeing genuine interest in my peers and my friends, other students, and the excitement around something as simple as a reusable container is amazing. And just seeing how that can blossom into something bigger. Like, what would that look like if we expanded it? And how can that become a movement? How do we think about waste? And it's a really good way to contextualize it. So with that, I'm really thankful for what PSRF has brought me. In retrospect, it's one of the best programs out there to really see how you can make a direct impact. So I want to thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Sam. Next, we have Alex, class of 2021, to walk us through the work he completed as our athletics PSRF. Alec?
Hi, so my name's Alec White. I'm a junior environmental studies major and chemistry minor, and I worked on the environmental sustainability and athletics project. So funny enough, today's actually my 21st birthday, and while it's not exactly how I envisioned spending it, I think that all I really want for my birthday is to have a really good presentation. So you guys can let me know in the end how well that went. So why athletics? I'm a member of the men's basketball team, and I spend a lot of time in the athletic facilities. I was drawn to this project because I wanted to combine two of my passions of sustainability and athletics and do what I could to create a positive attitude towards sustainability within the department. And so at Swarthmore specifically, 40% of students participate in club, intramural, or varsity sports. And with such a large amount of students that go through the facilities every day, athletics at Swarthmore has the capability to encourage change across campus and has in the past. And coupled with the rise of athletics as a whole is giving us a broader platform to project this. Multiple teams making Centennial Conference playoffs, NCAAs, and even the national championship game. And our small school size, which some sees a detriment, can actually be used to our advantage to implement these projects. So my project kind of broke down into two sections, a pre-COVID-19 and a post-COVID-19. So the first thing I worked on was a project called Threes for Trees with a green advisor, Chris Matthews. So I originally seen this project from Portland Trail Blazers, where they partnered with an organization to plant a tree for every three-pointer made in a season, and we brainstormed a way to make a version for Swarthmore. So we met with Momi Jeske, the Chrome Woods PSRF, to make it possible. And so the men's and women's basketball team combined for over 300 made three-pointers this season. So that's going to be a lot of trees. Secondly, my part of my project was educating student athletes to make them more environmentally engaged citizens. So the waste training game was designed to be a fun way to educate the students and help them know how to properly sort their waste into the three bins we know and love at Swarthmore College. And then secondly, with the student organization, Garnet Go Green, we developed a ranking system to rank each of the teams on how sustainable they are. And so as you can see, besides a few notable exceptions, nearly everyone in the department is in the bronze or silver category, which shows that almost everyone is doing something, and now it's a matter of ramping it up and hopefully one day getting everyone into gold. And while the purpose of these projects is ideally to get everyone on each team super motivated about sustainability and more knowledgeable about how to be a more environmentally engaged citizen, if even one person on each team is able to do this, they can kind of lead their own teams and make the department as a whole better, which is kind of what I've seen on my team. My teammates come to me asking me what goes in what bins. My roommates on my team acknowledge that they find themselves recycling more when they're around me. And I think that's kind of a part of a big reason why my men's basketball team is one of the only silver ranked teams. So post-COVID-19, my project transitioned into more about carbon offsets. So what is a carbon offset? Everything that we use that requires electricity or gas emits carbon dioxide as a byproduct and contributes to climate change. So companies like TerraPass, which is the company Swarthmore uses, calculate how much CO2 you emit and come up with a price to offset these emissions by putting that money into projects funding renewable energy and carbon capture. And then the organization gets a certificate showing they've offset their carbon emissions. So let's break this down for a trip that Swarthmore Athletics knows all too well, to our rival Hopkins. So Johns Hopkins University, the trip is 181 miles round trip, and in a standard coach van that the department uses, emits about 0.3 metric tons of carbon dioxide, or 300 kilograms, and roughly 660 pounds. And that's just one trip. So for the 18 and 19 school year, the varsity teams traveled almost 20,000 miles, emitting 54 metric tons of carbon dioxide, not including air travel. So that's not including volleyball's trip to Grand Rapids, Michigan, the baseball and softball teams to Florida, or men's basketball to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so that total price came out to $1,300, and split among the 22 teams is roughly $60 per team. So looking forward, the Threes for Trees program, we were planning to plant on Earth Day, which obviously we weren't able to do, but that's ready to go as soon as we are able to get back on campus. But I started thinking, we had the idea, why does it have to just be basketball? You know, why can't it be every goal scored in soccer, every kill in volleyball, every lap ran around the track? Let's make this a department-wide program. Similarly, with the waste orientation event, the groundwork has been laid and is ready to be handed off to a green advisor once we're back on campus to be actually performed. And finally, in terms of offsets, I think despite the state of the economy that we're facing and the athletic department's strict budgets already, I think the $60 can be easily fundraised or applied for as a grant or something, because I think while it won't make a huge difference in itself, I think it's a really big important first step. And at the very least, it's symbolic that Swarthmore Athletics acknowledges that they know and we know what we're putting into the atmosphere, and we're working on reducing it. And this project will also be continued by the carbon offset PSRF next year across the entire Swarthmore facilities. So I wanted to thank our PSRF project board and mentor, Coach Eric Wagner, Tobin Adams, Adam Hertz, Lizabeth Drake, my professors, Carl and Aurora, Brenna and Kyle, and all the other PSRFs for a great year. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks so much, Alec, for a great presentation. Next up is Momi, class of 2022, who's been working on Crumbwood's engagement for the past year. Momi?
Hi, everyone. My name is Momi Jeski. I'm the Crumbwoods PSRF. And I just want to talk a little bit about the importance of restoration. So why restore the land in the first place? Everything on this planet is interconnected. Every ecosystem, every waterway, foodway, or food type ecosystem, food system, ocean system, every system is interconnected, and we live off of those interconnected systems. During the climate crisis specifically, not only do green spaces and trees intake carbon, not only are they extremely biodiverse, but they are the very groundwork for which we live off of. If they go down, we go down with them. So I just want to talk about a concept called Malama Aina. I'm from Hawaii, Hilo, Hawaii, born and raised. And Malama Aina basically means to steward or care for the land and protect the land. It was ingrained in me at a very young age that the land is precious and sacred, and I am a product of the land. I live off of it, and it provides for me, so I must care for it and nourish it. So the Crum Woods is an amazing ecosystem to enjoy and learn from. Poor environmental practices have threatened its sanctity, and it is in need of restoration initiatives. When the woods are not being utilized and its ecosystems are threatened, that's when change is necessary. So this was the initial why for this project. So the project mission and goals for my Crum Woods PSRF project. 1, increase student, faculty, staff, and community member safety and engagement in Crum Woods, as well as 2, continue to implement the Crum Woods 10-year restoration and stewardship plan. So how would I do this? I had 3 main projects this year, or 3 main goals to achieve. 1, there are new trail markers being installed in Crum Woods. 2, the Lang Swale construction. If you don't know what the Lang Swale is, it's the marshy, eroded area underneath the Lang's Music Building in Swarthmore. And 2, I was to host a restoration planting. So first, the trail markers engagement. So these new trail markers were being installed in Crum Woods, and the hope was that it would increase not only the engagement in the Crum Woods, but also greatly increase the safety of people, community members, and Swarthmore members walking in Crum Woods. So I was in charge of publicizing this. So I created a trail marker brochure. I tabled with Sue in Sci Commons. I wrote articles in the and to be published in the Phoenix, Swarthmorean, Reader's Digest, and the staff and faculty email listserv, and then also there was the actual installation, which I was also a part of. So the Lang Swale construction. So I had this was a big part of the project, and I had several meetings with Jan Semler and AES, as well as my mentors, Applied Ecological Services. And I ended up sending an email of potential interest to companies, 7 companies that we were possibly thinking of contracting for this project. And we were we were beginning the bidding process, but then due to COVID, we didn't have the funding for this project at this time. So it's going to be pushed to next year. The restoration planting was also going to be a big part of my project. I had planned an Earth Week restoration planting for the Swarthmore community. The planting was to coincide with the Crum Creek cleanup to increase the volunteers. The plants were ordered, and the publicity for the event was we were beginning to plan it. But then also it was during Earth Week, April 21st, so it was unable to happen, and the plants were mostly planted by the gardeners, and mostly Lars, who finished the planting actually this morning. But there are a lot of plants to plant. But despite these setbacks, I was also, just being a PSRF let me have a lot of other opportunities. So first, I was the official note taker for the Crumwood Stewardship Committee meetings. I was also part of the Trailhead Signs Subcommittee because we were going to implement, and we still plan to, some trailhead signs as well as the trail markers. I was also able to attend the Chester Ridley Crum CRC Watershed Association Awards Dinner, where where the Scott Arboretum won an award for stewardship of the Crum Woods, I believe. And I was able to basically just meet a bunch of people in the greater Swarthmore area who were involved in sustainability, so that was really cool. Also, I was able to attend the Arboretum Assistance Update in Plant Jeopardy ran by Sue McQueen. And I basically just introduced myself to all the Arboretum assistants and played the Jeopardy, and I correctly guessed that an apple has cyanide in its seeds, and I won a squash. And I also did a lot of trail maintenance with Lars this past year. And lastly, I was able to attend the stormwater training with Ross Bickart, who's an environmental engineer and who's did a lot of work with the college for like the Singer Hall and the new student parking lot. So yeah, here are just some photos that I've taken of the Crumwoods and me doing trail maintenance work. And so my future recommendations to the next PSRF: continue to implement the 10-year Crumwood Restoration and Stewardship Plan, host more student-friendly events in the Crumwoods, and create more opportunities for students to get involved with the Woods, Arboretum, and Grounds crew. And then I would like my canceled events to actually be implemented, since we put so much work into it, but it never came to fruition. So first, the restoration planning in the Meadow, and I wanted to connect this to the climate crisis and the importance of restoration in a climate crisis. And also the continuation of the request for proposal contracting for the Lang Swale construction. And so I just want to leave off with one word. This is a Hawaiian word, pono. It means doing the right thing, the sense of righteousness, and actively choosing to do the right thing. And I think in this time where so much of the wrong thing or so much lack of the right thing is being done, we all need to be more pono right now. Choose to do the right thing. And so I just want to give a big mahalo to my mentors, Jeff Jabko and Lars Resseman, and Sue McQueen. You weren't my official mentor, but you helped me so much this semester, or this past year. And also a big mahalo to Jerry, Jan, Carr, Aurora, Kyle, and my entire PSRF cohort, as well as the Scott Arboretum. Thank you guys so much. My project wouldn't have been possible without you guys, so thank you.
Thanks so much, Momi. To round out this group, Seneca, class of 2020, will present her PSRF project focused on sustainable transportation. Seneca?
Hi, everybody. My name is Seneca Kingurzo, and I'm a senior environmental studies and biology major. I applied to the PSRF program because I wanted to be a part of the college's path towards carbon neutrality. A large portion of my education at SWAT has been centered around understanding the social, political, and biological implications of climate change. With this background, I recognize that addressing climate change and the climate crisis is absolutely essential. I saw the PSRF program as an opportunity to help the college meet its goals and work towards a more equitable and inclusive future. Today, I'm really excited to tell you a little bit about the progress that's been made on the transportation project this year. So the overarching goal of this project is to reduce Swarthmore's carbon footprint so that the college can achieve its 2030 carbon neutrality goals. I'm sure that talking about the college's fleet isn't really everyone's cup of tea, but it's important to realize that not all sustainability work is super flashy. Making seemingly small changes can make an actual big difference. So in order to reduce SWAT's carbon footprint, we have to reduce the transportation-related emissions because they account for more than a third of total emissions. We've identified the current fleet of vehicles that range in age from 10 to 20 years old as an area in which we can work to reduce our carbon footprint. We've been working to update and centralize the fleet to ensure safety and efficiency while maximizing use. We've also begun looking into ways of incentivizing students to use public transportation, but I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation. Throughout the year, we've worked hard to not lose sight of the goal of achieving carbon neutrality. It's important that we ensure that centralized the centralized fleet emits less carbon than the current fleet. So after finalizing the inventory of the centralized fleet, we calculated the carbon footprint of both fleets. I'm really excited to report that the centralized fleet is projected to emit 25% less carbon dioxide equivalents than the current fleet. This is really awesome news, but it's also worth noting that the centralized fleet will contain only one hybrid and one electric vehicle. The reduced carbon footprint is largely a factor of the vehicles being newer, but not necessarily more efficient than is expected of 2020 models. So in short, there's a lot more that can be done. Though leasing vehicles is maybe antithetical to reducing our carbon footprint, it will enable the college to access the most current fuel-efficient vehicles while continuing to incorporate more hybrid and electric vehicles into the fleet. So the centralized fleet consists of 18 vehicles, 9 10 to 12 passenger vans, 7 8-passenger minivans, and 1 hybrid compact car, as well as 1 electric compact car. And there are already models of hybrid vans that can and should be incorporated into the fleet. So the centralized fleet will be put to test in a pilot program the next time everyone's back on campus. It will consist of multiple campus groups and academic departments, including athletics, biology, engineering, theater, the Alang Center, Chester's Children's Choir, and OSE as well. And the idea is, with time, more and more groups can be integrated into the program until the entire campus has access to the fleet. This is a good model for how to share resources. So one of the benefits of centralizing the fleet of vehicles is that management is streamlined and simplified. Vehicles can be reserved via 25 Live, 48 hours in advance. We can also increase or decrease vehicles to adjust for high demand periods. So if the theater department has a play the same weekend that there's a Frisbee tournament and a biofield trip, we can easily bring more vehicles to campus to meet the needs of stakeholders. Maintenance will also be centralized. So Interstate, the company that we're working with, will pick up vehicles in need of maintenance and leave loaner vehicle when the original vehicle can be brought back to campus. The centralized fleet will also be equipped with EasyPass, gas cards, and roadside assistance. Now I want to talk a little bit about other means of student transportation. We know that students are using Uber, Lyft, SEPTA, as well as their own personal vehicles. We also know that One Cards are compatible with the SEPTA key cards, meaning in a perfect world, the One Card office could give students points to use on SEPTA, and students could swipe on trains, buses, and subways with their student One Cards. Other institutions such as Bryn Mawr, Haverford, Villanova, Drexel, and Jefferson have also expressed interest in this type of program. Currently, the funding for student transportation is coming from many different places. If this funding was consolidated, it might be able to be distributed among students in different ways. This is another example of pooling resources. More data definitely needs to be gathered before we can start to do this. And this should include tracking funding. Where is money coming from and where is it going? Surveying students to see if they would benefit from subsidized public transportation tickets. And working with campus groups such as SGO and SBC to imagine equitable ways of reallocating this funding. This is really exciting work that could have a positive impact on the college and the lives of students as they work to reduce their own carbon footprint. So here are 3 of my main takeaways, not only from my project, but also from my experience as a PSRF. First, SWAT certainly has the capacity to achieve carbon neutrality because of the hard work of many capable individuals. This process is going to take a lot of effort. And I hope that my brilliant PSRF fellows will, if nothing else, continue to convince you that in the face of the current climate crisis, ignorance is not bliss. There is always more work to be done. And I'm really humbled to know that I could contribute even marginally to these efforts. And 3, as a graduating senior trying to find a job, the PSRF program has made me really think not only about the type of work that I want to do, but also the kind of person I want to be. It's forced me to think about the standards and morals that I'm simply unwilling to sacrifice. And in conclusion, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to participate in the PSRF program. And special thank you to the PSRF course facilitators, Cara, Aurora, and Kyle, as well as my project board members and mentors, specifically Anthony Coscignano and Brenna Leary. You were all integral to the progress made on this project.
Thank you, Seneca, for that great presentation. And a big virtual shout out, a virtual round of applause for Sam, Alec, Momi, and Seneca. I thought those were all excellent. We're now going to transition again to a short question and answer session, again led by Brenna. I would just remind you all, and now is not too late, if you have questions or feedback for those panelists, please send them our way. Brenna, over to you.
Hi again, everyone. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask these questions in the order that they came in. But again, if we don't get to your question, don't worry. The students will be able to type answers after this period is done. So first up, Samantha, could you see the reusable takeout container program being useful as an option for food service in our new socially distant world?
Yeah, I think if we were to return to campus and social distancing was in place, I think this would be a really good opportunity to see how, I guess, it would put a lot of responsibility on the students. If each student was to take their own container, it would definitely have to have like a lot more instruction on how that would work. But it's definitely doable. I definitely see it as being this opportunity to like quickly expand that initiative. Most certainly possible, for sure.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is for Alec from Jennifer Pflueger. So the question is, do team sustainability ratings correlate with progressive coaches? So for instance, how important is the coach's attitude versus the attitude of the players on the team?
So the ranking is based off of a few criteria. So it's the few that come to mind are like a sustainability event coordinated every few years, reusable water bottles in practice, and like reposting my like a social media on the Garnet Go Green Instagram, which is among other ones. And so certain ones like the sustainability event, it can be coach led, but mostly I think it's led by the students. And so progressive coaches progressive coaches help, but they definitely don't hinder motivated students from getting their whole team's grade up.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Momi. So when you go ahead and do plant plantings or tree plantings, does that also include the removal of invasive species, or is that a different process altogether?
Nice question. The planting I was planning to host, the restoration one, it was in the Meadow, which is monitored by AES. And so they do a great deal with managing the invasives and helping everything grow there. But it was also correlated with the Crum Creek cleanup, which I believe involves an aspect of invasive removal along the Crum, as well as the new or the Langs well construction. While it didn't we didn't have the funding to actually complete the construction now, that AES also manages that area. And so they are beginning with the invasive removal part of the remediation of that area. So, yeah.
Thank you. The next question is for Seneca from Roderick. So what were the barriers to making the central fleet more electric and hybrid vehicles versus traditional gas vehicles?
So I think that part of the goal of the fleet was to minimize the cost associated with the centralization process. And so a lot of times the hybrid and electric vehicles tend to be more expensive. And although the college is working to install more charging stations, I think there are only 1 or 2 on campus right now. So there were concerns around bringing too many electric vehicles that the college couldn't actually manage appropriately. However, something that's interesting is that the vans, meaning the minivans, that will be incorporated into the fleet, there are actually hybrid models. And so we're kind of in the process of deciding whether or not we can incorporate more of those into the fleet instead of the traditional gas fleet models.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Samantha for this next question. So what does the scientific literature say regarding the relative environmental impacts of reusable versus single-use disposable containers? Did you look into the life cycle of those products, including greenhouse gas emissions and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I didn't specifically look at a lot of these statistics in terms of the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and like the specifics of the energy use, but I do know that especially with our current compostable ware containers, it's having a huge effect on a lot of the compost that we output and is taken to the composting facility. So in general, thanks to Tyler and Chantel, you'll hear more from them. They did a waste characterization study, and they were able to pinpoint that our compostable containers, the output, it represents about 2% of the waste leaving Swarthmore. That's 2% of the entire waste that is just represented by these compostable containers. And a lot of this other compostable ware, we have these hard plastics like the compostable forks and utensils and the cups and everything. Like that's having an impact and affecting how quickly all of our compost is being processed and like turned into like rich soil. So when stuff like this, when the compostable process isn't going as quickly or isn't happening properly because of this influx of hard like plant plastics, that's going to be releasing a lot more gases like methane that is released from improperly composting food products. So that's definitely a thing to consider. I wasn't able to look at the reusable impacts on terms of water usage. I was going to look at that before our semester became virtual. And I was going to look into our dishwashing system to see how those effects were being recorded, but wasn't able to be given that chance. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So next we'll go back to Alec. And the question is, what are some of the criteria you used to rank specific teams on their sustainability?
Yeah, so I briefly mentioned it in the last one, but so mostly it's members involved in the club Garden Go Green, which does sustainability actions on campus with students, usable water bottles, in composting and recycling at away games, and then awareness through social media pages and projects being made. And then that list is reevaluated, it's constantly being reevaluated. And so more teams start doing better, then I think we'll add more criteria so that, you know, it's an always evolving process. It's not really, it's never just going to be stagnant.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Momi, and I'm going to give you 2 questions in one. So do you happen to have any metrics on who uses the crumb? And do you have ideas to get more students and community members into the woods?
In terms of the metrics, I don't think that we have any data on that, but I also noticed your part of the question where like that would be a useful way to get more people involved, or like, I don't know, reach out to possible people to just become involved. And I think that's a great idea. That was part of like I guess the trail markers article type of thing, although like just to get community members as well as students and faculty and staff at Swarthmore involved, or at least engaged in increased safety in the crumb. But I think similar things could happen with that, where more like publicizing not only to the campus, but also to the greater Swarthmore community. And then ideas for student engagement in the crumb. I've talked to Sue on this a bit. And I think just there's always more events that we can do in the crumb. I think one thing that is really an untapped resource is the trail maintenance with Lars. So I don't think that I was the only student that ever like did that with him. And I think it's pretty fun. I don't know. And it's nice to work with the volunteers and with Lars. He's very knowledgeable. Yeah, so I think that's a great way to get more students involved, as well as plantings and cleanup, crumb cleanups, creek cleanups. So yeah.
Thanks, Momi. And then our final question is for Seneca. The question is the new fleet of cars, are they available only to certain departments? And is the idea that eventually that will replace the van rental system and become a more centralized fleet?
Yeah, so the idea is that right now we have those core groups that I was talking about. They'll be integrated into this pilot program, and then with time we'll be able to incorporate more and more departments into this fleet. But the problem is that we need to adjust the size of the fleet to account for the number of departments that are involved. So part of what we're trying to do with the pilot program is to see if the number of vehicles that we have and the types of vehicles we have, if they're sufficient for the groups that we currently have involved. So we need to make sure that we're being responsible as we continue to incorporate more vehicles and more departments into the fleet. And yes, the idea is that it would replace their van rental system as well. And then any vehicle rentals could be done through the fleet manager instead of through external rental companies, just to try to simplify and reduce the responsibility of departments in managing rentals and their own vehicles as well.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder, go ahead and type the answers to any of the other questions that remain in the Q&A box. And thank you to Terrence for doing a great job of removing those questions that we answered live. So back to you, Kyle.
Awesome, thank you so much, Brenna. Before we move on to our last set of presentations, which I'm really excited about, I'd like to introduce Lizabeth Drake, my colleague in the Office of Sustainability. As our climate action manager, Lizabeth deals with all things carbon on campus and works and really leads efforts to move the college towards carbon neutrality. Lizabeth will give us an overview of efforts related to campus systems that have occurred recently and are coming to campus in the next few years related to sustainability. Lizabeth, take it away.
Great, thanks so much, Kyle. I appreciate the opportunity to join this event today and share some campus sustainability updates with everyone and hear about all of the great progress that our PSRFs have made this year. So as most of you likely know, Swarthmore College has committed to achieving carbon neutrality no later than 2035 in acknowledgement of the urgent threat of the climate crisis. To this end, we've been working to develop an energy master plan, which we've been calling the Roadmap to Zero, that charts the path to achieving carbon-free energy systems on campus by transitioning away from fossil fuel combustion to a decarbonized, electrified district energy system. One exciting step in our campus's journey to carbon neutrality was the approval of the new Dining and Community Commons project by the Board of Managers in December of this past year. This new space, which will exist as an addition to the existing Sharpless Dining Hall, is being designed to house a large central geo-exchange plant in the basement. Additionally, we're pursuing the ambitious Living Building Challenge PEDAL certification for this building, which requires us to produce 105% of the building's total electricity consumption with on-site renewable energy. The geo-exchange plant in the basement of this building that I mentioned is a central component of the Roadmap to Zero and will power our heating and cooling systems for the entire campus. This makes it possible to electrify these systems, moving away from natural gas combustion in our steam plant and moving to 100% renewable electricity for heating and cooling, which is a huge step towards eliminating our campus carbon footprint, since together on-site combustion and electricity procurement make up about 2/3 of our carbon footprint. Additionally, the new Dining and Community Commons project will also foster sustainable dining and campus operations through a number of other features, including improved compost collection in support of our zero waste goals, a focus on locally sourced food, the use of energy efficient induction cooking technology, outdoor meadow areas and food gardens to provide fresh produce, and sophisticated stormwater management and recapture technology. In order to meet the net zero energy target that we've set for the Dining and Community Commons, we're working to install a significant amount of rooftop solar on campus in the coming years in order to provide renewable energy for the building. Most recently, we've hired an experienced renewable energy consultant, Competitive Energy Services, using funds provided from our internal carbon charge program to help guide us through this process to develop and release an RFP later this year for a solar developer. Our goal is to begin construction on these rooftop panels by the end of this year, which is a really exciting step towards becoming a carbon neutral campus. Lastly, we've continued our work to improve energy efficiency on campus, which is a really important component of the Roadmap to Zero through our Green Revolving Fund, which is a piece of our carbon charge program. The Green Revolving Fund, which was actually started by a PSRF a few years ago, provides a loan to complete energy efficiency projects on campus, and then the loan is repaid to the fund through energy savings on our utility bills. To date, we've invested in 7 large-scale projects on campus, including steam piping installation and LED lighting retrofits of buildings like the Science Center and the Field House, And altogether, these investments are expected to reduce our annual greenhouse gas emissions by more than 700 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents and save us more than $100,000 per year in utility costs. So we've made a lot of exciting progress in terms of energy efficiency through this fund. All in all, we have a lot of exciting initiatives underway to improve system-wide sustainability on campus and drive progress towards our 2035 carbon neutrality commitment. With that, I'll turn it back to Kyle to introduce our next set of PSRFs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So I know a couple of you have probably joined in the past couple minutes. I'd just like to remind everyone that you can use questions. You can write questions and provide feedback using the question and answer tool for both the PSRF fellows, and also if you have questions for Elizabeth about what she just presented on, feel free to also ask her those questions. So without further ado, our final set of presentations, they're generally structured around transforming our campus and the community. First up, I'd like to introduce Sasha, class of 2020. Sasha is a senior fellow, and she's going to talk to us about the work that she's done in the past year. She's titling this project Composting, although I think it'll be a little bit different than what you might expect to hear a project about composting. Sasha, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So like Kyle just said, my name is Sasha. I'm what they call a senior fellow. And in that role, I supported Declan and Atticus with their PSRF project, which they'll talk about, I'm sure, so I'll leave that to them, and instead share the work I've been doing more generally. I've been active with sustainability and environmental studies pretty much since my freshman spring. I was in PSRF my sophomore year, helping with the zero waste effort. Then my junior spring, after a semester abroad, I started planning a campaign. We call it Days of Disruption. And we went through with most of the campaign, but we scrapped the teach-in, replaced it with our own version of a school strike for climate, where we sat on Parish Porch with signs, handed out flyers. I guess the presentation's not working, so well, I'll just talk, it's fine. So we went through with most of that campaign, scrapped the teach-in, replaced it with our own version of a school strike for climate, where we sat on Parish Porch with signs, handed out flyers, shared readings, and invited people to talk with us. And I did it because at the time I was overwhelmed with grief and anger, feeling like everyday life was absurd and that I had to do something to interrupt it. Then in the summer, I did some work with support from the Sustainability Office, which continued into the school year. And basically it was all about coming to terms with the end of the world as we know it, thinking about what it means to live and die well in the face of it, and figuring out how to make space for conversations we're maybe not used to having that allow us to sit with hard emotions like grief, fear, guilt, confusion, that I suspect many of us feel when we think about a thing like climate change, but tend to deny or push away with distractions because they feel bad and we don't know what to do with them. So instead of repressing all that, how can we create context for processing so that those emotions can actually flow and become compost for new ways of being? And as I was writing this presentation, I was reminded of a question I came across last month that expresses this idea pretty well. And that is, what if grieving is a power? What if sharing our senses of loss awakens other senses and capacities and capabilities that have been repressed as we have performed progress in modern citizenship? But it's not just about emotions. I'm also interested in how to open up space where our beliefs and assumptions can be challenged so that they become visible to us and we have the opportunity to look at them and ask whether they really serve us or not. Because so much of my own journey was unlearning assumptions I had about what I could expect my life to be and what I was entitled to that didn't make much sense, and in fact were preventing me from showing up with the courage, integrity, and compassion that's needed for these times. So along those lines, one small provocation. I think it's safe to say that many of us act as if this way of life can be sustained indefinitely, as if Swarthmore College will be around forever and the endowment will always have value, when actually there are more and more signs that that's not true. And in fact, we know it can't be true because in the words of Octavia Butler, the only lasting truth is change. So I'd like to know what would become possible if we acknowledged that truth. And that relates to the other big thing I'm interested in, which is how can we interrupt what the Decolonial Futures Collective identifies as the 4 denials that underlie a harmful habit of being. So those 4 denials are denial of systemic violence and complicity in harm, the fact that our comforts, securities, and pleasures are subsidized by dispossession and exploitation elsewhere, denial of unsustainability, the fact that the planet has limits and we are at those limits, denial of entanglement, that we insist on seeing ourselves as separate from each other and the land, and denial of the magnitude of the problem, which keeps us seeking simplistic solutions that promise hope and comfort, but leave deep festering wounds unhealed. So that's the work I've tried to engage with since last spring, opening up space to sit with hard emotions, sit with unhelpful beliefs and assumptions, sit with the uncomfortable realities we tend to deny, with the hope that making these spaces might help enable possibilities that are urgently needed. This work has taken many forms because my commitment to figuring out how to create different spaces has meant that I've had to go out and actually try it whenever possible. So it hasn't just looked like the school strike, it's also looked like conversations with friends and family, faculty and staff, class presentations, PSRF presentations, organizing a student-run course, and helping out with the Climate Essentials short course. In other words, I try to hold space and share what I've learned whenever I can. So if that's true, then what's the conversation I want to help bring into being today? It's actually one that I alluded to earlier and started having just a few weeks ago. In an unexpected place with a small group of students, faculty, and staff. Inspired, again, by the Decolonial Futures Collective and their language of hospicing modernity and assisting with the birth of something new, undefined, and potentially, but not necessarily wiser, we asked, what would it mean for Swarthmore College to die well? What commitments would we make and act on now while we still have the chance? What would be required to hospice this institution and turn its wealth into fertile compost that allows for healthier ways of being? And how do we even get to a place where we're ready to have that conversation? Because it did come up while we talked that many of us have been conditioned to feel threatened by endings and loss. And yet it also came up, this idea that healthy societies are actually open to their own death and transformation because they understand death as composting. That's the conversation I aspire to grow by way of this presentation. I don't know if it will work. It depends on whether this resonated with anyone, whether there's anyone willing to act on this invitation, which is what this presentation was meant to be, an invitation. Because I want to be clear, and I say this lovingly, I didn't write this presentation so that you can sit back and feel good about what Swarthmore students are doing. I didn't write it to give you hope. I said all this to make you think about what you can do and the reality you can help create. As Native activist John Trudell once said, hope is waiting to be served. I think it's better to pray, to activate our intelligence. It is all a matter of how we use our intelligence and our thinking process. On that note, email me, info's on the slide, if you're interested in making this conversation happen. And I just want to mention, given that COVID-19 has disrupted our lives in a big way, and given that with the state of the biosphere, you can pretty credibly say that more disruptions are coming, this might be a really good opportunity for serious discussion about how we can live differently in the face of unprecedented crises and put some big changes on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha, for that, for that presentation. Next up, we have Chantal and Tyler, both class of 2022, and they will be presenting to you today about equitable zero waste.
This is so good. Oh, thanks. It was very strange. I loved it.
Sasha, I think you might not be on mute.
You haven't been paying attention to all of them. So
Are you on mute?
Oh.
Okay, sorry about that. Next up, Chantal and Tyler will be presenting on equitable zero waste. Chantal and Tyler, go for it.
Hello, I'm Tyler White. I am a sophomore here, and I'm a double major in political science and environmental studies.
Hello, my name is Chantel. I'm also a sophomore, and I study environmental studies. I decided to join the PSRF program because I felt called to serve my community in an environmentally sustainable way.
All work is people work. When we enter into space, it is important to become acquainted with its purpose, with the intention of its meaning. If we do not, we will fail to truly ever be effectual. That is why we want to orient this space with a small mindfulness chant. Change as thought, change as action.
Change as thought, change as action.
Change as thought.
Change as action. That mantra informed the foundation of our project. Zero waste is seen as an ideal, and it is our ideal, but how do we get there? What does Swarthmore look like as a zero waste system? How do we bring everyone along in the process? These questions produced a two-pronged agenda, engaging in research that sought to change the way people think, and using shifts in thought to move people towards collective action. We tried to materialize this concept as our goal for the second half of our project. First, by identifying existing language, metrics, and structures around zero waste. Second, evaluating them for their clarity and utility. And finally, proposing new edits that center a greater appeal to transform the approach of zero waste from diversion to reduction. Change as action. The first stage of our project was conducting the annual waste audit. As you can see by the green bar, this allowed us to assess whether the college was fulfilling its sole zero waste commitment, 80% of diversion of waste from the Commands incinerator. The green bar shows that there is an increasing trend of diversion. However, the college is far from holding its minimal contribution to change. We are standing by and consuming as much as we want, discarding as much as we want, and allowing trash to be burned, but we are trying to change that.
Providing a basis of our approach to meeting our goal, we decided to set up our project around this definition of zero waste. Zero waste is a way of life that promotes the goal of reducing the amount of material we throw away and instead reincorporating byproducts of one system for use for another system. There is no such thing as waste in nature. In nature, the byproduct of one system is feedstock for another system. Only humans have created this thing like waste. We sought to structure and approach the process of our project around three key points: intervention, reduction, and equity.
So unfortunately, we weren't able to complete this part of the process. We weren't able to hold focus groups, on-campus messaging, or include some label changes. We also weren't able to do some artist calls and work with Chester artists in collaborations, which we're really sad about. However, we were able to do some other things, such as comparative research. We were able to define and find some definitions of zero waste, able to create some environmental justice metrics for zero waste, such as remembering the fact that not only our trash waste goes to an incinerator in Chester, but so does our sewage waste. We also were able to figure out how other institutions were engaging in environmentalism. Through several meetings, we were able to incorporate more inclusive, explicit environmental justice-centered language in conversations, official college website publications, as well as the zero waste plan. We were able to offer a template for streamlining recycling reporting from departments on campus and host a focus group with green advisors on interventions for best practices with students and EVS techs, who are the people who help take care of sanitation in our dorms and the engagement in between. We were also able to hold meetings and began the foundational support for centralizing purchasing at the college with an explicit zero waste directive. We proposed and incorporated environmental justice metrics into the college zero waste plan and developed robust recommendations such as single plastic interventions.
Additionally, we sought to really focus on our messaging to make sure that it really came through on our three key points of reduction, equity, and intervention. We analyzed and articulated the data from our waste characterization study to look at ways to improve, but to do that in a way in which all of campus could be aware of what those improvements needed to be. And we also thought of different ways that we could visually represent environmental justice in our work, and we produced several first drafts of that kind of language and visuals. Lastly, we're in the process of organizing. Currently, we've coordinated with the majority of the environmental advisory councils in Delaware County to engage in conversations about how we set up a structured and collective pursuit of engaging with the contracts at the Compost incinerator that's in Chester, and it's helping to produce a lot of negative environmental injustice actions in the area. We were also able to successfully host a minimalism symposium on campus where we got together 30 to 40 different students to have conversations and hear from different students who are conceptualizing different ways to live minimally.
Building connections and mobilizing connections conceptualizes what we are not able to accomplish from not being on campus, but we will talk about what we will happily carry over for the future. First off, we'd like to begin with the new student orientation to trying to enact or share a possibility of separating recycling and trash in dorms, either using bins from Worthmore or roommates. We're also working in conjunction to create a clothing closet and expanding the use of Worthmore, a free store on campus for students, as a tangible space of environmental justice on campus. We're also working, as you saw through Oswaldo and Samantha, the expansion of the Green Advisor program as a vision where students' workers would be able to support the clothing closet by working at it, collecting clothes, or organizing it similarly to how students work at Worthmore.
Mobilizing connection changes action. We decided to utilize the connections of all the things that we just previously said to really think about what are different ways that we engage more participation and institute different mechanisms of institutionalization. For us, this concept of institutionalizing something is less of getting our proposals and our recommendations adopted by the college, but instead generating a legacy of desire and engagement among students, staff, admin, and other demographic groups around what does zero waste mean. For us, that looks like having some sort of artistic component between Swarthmore artist groups, students, and faculty, and engaging them directly with Chester residents, artists, and organizations. We also are seeking to spend the next year, insofar as we're able to, host different pop-up events such as talks, workshops, volunteer days, and different academic challenges that really seeks to have this conversation of environmental justice to be ongoing and not just be a niche conversation, and also to really center in on advocacy. How do we work towards bringing our plastic ban to realize it on campus? How do we officially adopt a centralized campus purchasing policy? We've also constructed different ways of thinking about establishing a waste fee that would be similar to our carbon fee, which would charge different departments on the amount of waste that they're directly sending to the incinerator, and really staying true on structuring a collective action towards organizing with the environmental advisory councils within the Delaware County.
To close this out, we want to finish off with a quote. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly.
Change is thought, change is action. We'd also like to end this by thanking all of the wonderful folks who helped us throughout this process, from our project mentors to Alec White and Chip Proctor, to as well as our project board, and as well as all of the wonderful folks that we have worked with, including in our class, and really just with each other. I'd like to thank Chantal a lot for being extremely supportive throughout this process.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you both for a really excellent presentation. Next up is Lucy, class of 2022, who will talk to us about the Chester Semester PSRF project. Lucy, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy Fetterman, and I am the Chester Semester PSRF this year. I'm speaking to you today from, I'm speaking to you today from the Bay Area, territory of the Muwekma people. I'd like to thank you all for being here and would like to thank especially Ceremonial Chief Gentle Moon for the land acknowledgement. It's crucial that we acknowledge the violent histories and the processes of understanding space and place. So this project sits at the touch point between, in the words of researcher Vanessa Andreotti, systemic historical violence and the practices of unsustainability. In this project, the term sustainability and unsustainability apply to how we relate to one another, understanding that our relationships are fully integrated into our local and global ecosystems. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself to give you some context on why I do what I do. I was born and raised in Morningside Heights, Manhattan, territory of the Lenape people. As you can see, my family runs deep. I spent the majority of my life living next door to my grandparents. I spent summers and weekends with my family, visiting grandmothers, playing with cousins, listening to aunts and uncles have serious conversations. All that said, being an engaged member of my family chosen and otherwise, has meant learning a lot of hard lessons about what it means to be in relationship with the people that I care about and the communities that I care about. As my dad says, my childhood leading up to college gave me roots and wings, deep affinity to a sense of place, and learned experiences of respect, intergenerational learning, and self-reflection. So all of this played into my understanding of how I got involved in this work. A semester into school, Professor Mark Wallace of religion, connected me with Pamela Boyce-Sims, who works at African Diaspora Earth Care Coalition, ADC. And ADC is an organization facilitated by Pamela Boyce-Sims that focuses on supporting community resilience through medicinal herb planting and education at different sites throughout the city of Chester. Over the course of the year and a half that I worked with Pamela through Chester semester, I began to understand that the work that I did was inextricably interconnected with the people I was working with and the context I was working in. And that's been a really important part of my Swarthmore education, and I want to make sure that that's accessible to students throughout the campus. So why am I sitting here talking about Chester semester? The short answer is continuity. Chester semester comes out of 20 years of relationship building between individuals living and working in Chester and Professor Mark Wallace. And in this connection with community partners, Mark Wallace formed Chester semester so that there was a way for Swarthmore resources to support the longevity and continuity of these relationships, and specifically, in this case, talking about students, like student work and intellectual resources that students hold and emotional capacities. So as a Chester semester fellow, the continuity that I felt in the relationships that I was building really helped give me a context for the work I was doing. So what is Chester semester? Chester semester facilitates relationships that provide value to community partners through the work of student interns and value to students through deepening of responsibility through guided relationship building, weekly meetings with mentors, etc. It does this in exchange for 8 to 10 hours of committed work towards mutually agreed upon outputs between students and mentors. Students receive 1 credit for their transcript. To date, there are 2 core partnerships that have been cultivated through Chester semester. The first one is the one that I worked mostly with this year, which was with Pamela Boyce-Sims at QEW ADC. And the second one was with Reverend Zuline Wilkinson at Chester Eastside. So, okay, so then why am I here as a Chester semester PSRF? So up to this point, to become a Chester semester fellow, you had to either know Mark, know someone who knew Mark, or you had to seek Mark Wallace out and ask him about his work, the work that he was doing in relationship building with folks in Chester. So aside from the stress that this puts on Mark Wallace, the question kept coming back to how do we make this opportunity accessible to more students, and how do we ensure that that the relationships and the work of the community partners are continuing to be centered even after the original kind of bridge builders have gone. So in response to this question, Aurora offered to create a PSRF project. And this was a way that students could be at the center of these institutional change processes as we began to address these questions with Chester semester. And the work of my project this year was to explore what slow, sustainable, and trust-driven institutionalization of Chester semester could look like. I specifically focused on the relationship between ADC with Pamela, Lang Center, Office of Sustainability, and Chester semester. But yeah. Okay, so what is the long-term vision? The long-term vision for Chester semester is a Chester semester that's defined by its deep networks and trust, built by accountability to relationships with community partners over the course of many years. These are relationships that are built over time, and with that time comes power and transformation. And then PSRF fellows, the long-term role of PSRF fellows is to continue to institutionalize Chester semester in ways that support community building, community partners, and learned resilience support at every level of institutional implementation. So one example of that this year was the integration of more flat ways of communicating and using documents in our project board meetings as we met as a group. So, okay, so my specific deliverables from this year were we enrolled 200% more Chester semester students with ADC, which means more support for Pamela. We tripled the amount of paid student support hours through PSRF and the Office of Sustainability, which will help Chester semester carry out the recommendations from this year, and then also think about further steps. And then we have begun implementing a formal application process with support from the Alang Center to make sure that there's continuity of students. And then finally, we piloted integration between Chester semesters and PSRF Project Board, as well as a final white paper for Chester semester fellows So next year, we are hoping to sustain the growth of relationships that have been built with ADC, while also focusing some of those additional student hours on supporting Reverend Julian Wilkinson at Chester East Side to ensure that Chester semester continues to meet the needs of both community partners and is recruiting students that are a good match to do this work. Secondly, we will be launching our application process, which will look at crafting well-fitted placements between students and mentors, which is really similar to the process that Mark Wallace has facilitated over the past few years, only this way it'll be accessible to the entire student body. And this will take place through a working group that consists of community partners, Chester semester alumni, and supporting staff. And this will be housed at the Lang Center. And finally, we're looking at digging deeper on the complexities and complicities of work between Swarthmore College and our partners ADC and Chester East Side. This is deep and challenging work. There are a lot of different power dynamics at play, as the members of my project board can attest to over the course of the past year. And there are many differences in organizational structure and dynamics between a grassroots or community-based organization and a large, well-resourced institution. And the only way to move forward in longevity is to acknowledge these differences with mutual respect and center processes for healing as Chester semester becomes more institutionalized. And my work next year will be, I'll be a senior PSRF fellow next fall, and I'll help guide the incoming Chester semester PSRFs, Ananya, and Chester semester coordinator Natalie through the stories that have shaped my understandings of Chester semester and Chester semester PSRF, and then connect them with necessary people and networks so that they can begin to develop their own understandings. Okay, why does this matter? So there are intense and harmful power dynamics at play in the work that Chester semester sets out to do. As I've had to learn the hard way repeatedly over the course of the past year and a half, and working with Pamela, and then even more so once I became a PSRF, healing is really long and frustrating and exhausting, and it's a really humbling process. And so to leave Swarthmore College as a student with a deep ethical sense of social concern, which is what the mission statement says, as students, we are required to engage deeply with the work of reflecting on past harms and learning the lessons that have to be learned to continue to show up in spaces with and meet responsibilities. And Chester semester provides a framework to do this. Chester semester isn't about creating change in a fast-paced institutional way. It's about undercutting urges to, again, in the words of Dr. Andreotti, look good, do good, feel good, and commit to move at the speed of trust. As an institution, we must do the work that is necessary to show up into shared spaces generatively, ready to do work without taking up a lot of energy. So that's what I see the work of Chester semester and Chester semester being this year and in the coming years. And finally, I want to thank my project board, mentors Pamela Boyce-Sims, Mark Wallace, Aurora Winslade, and then Ben Berger, Ashley Henry, and Brenna, Chester Semester, partners and staff, Reverend Julian Wilkinson, Jennifer McGee, my sustainability stage, Mary Payne, and my cohort of PSRF fellows and Chester Semester fellows.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for that excellent presentation. Last but certainly not least, we have Declan, class of 2021, and Atticus, class of 2022, who will talk to us about their work this year building a climate community at Swarthmore and beyond. Declan and Atticus, take it away.
Hey everyone, I hope you can all hear me. We are so excited to be here today. Thank you all for hanging on there until the end. We're going to start just by introducing ourselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Declan, and I've been interested in climate change for a long time, but recently I've become much more passionate about it as I've met people who have helped me to reflect on just how much it'll impact everything around me. For example, the camp that I worked at last summer, this camp floods every few years, and last year there was a really bad flood that forced us to cancel part of the summer. And I know that on our current trajectory, this will only happen more and more often.
My name is Atticus, and I became energized to fight the climate crisis after spending a year living in Ecuador with this beautiful host family you see in the picture. And my host family relies entirely on farming to support their livelihood, and I can't stand the thought of their beautiful farm going from this to this. Climate scientists tell us that we have less than 10 years to make radical changes to our society and avoid ecological and societal collapse. This is really bad news, not just for my host family in Ecuador, but for all of us. And it provides us with an opportunity to make radical changes that not only mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis, but create a more just and egalitarian world. And we can make these changes because we are making them right now for coronavirus. This virus has made it evident that there are fundamental problems within the dominant structures of our society, most immediately the healthcare and economic systems. And it has shown us that when people are convinced of the necessity to make changes to their lives and prevent global catastrophe, they are able to do it. We can see this in social distancing happening around the world today. So in order to fight the climate crisis, the first step is to change people's hearts and minds. How can we do this at Swarthmore was the question that we asked going into this year. Declan and I began this process by understanding where our community currently stands on the climate crisis. Then we created and launched a short events and courses that met the community where it stood and created a sense of purposeful engagement with climate catastrophe. Finally, we used in-depth feedback from these events to make recommendations for the future.
So during the fall, we learned about climate perspectives through our involvement in these three main events. First, we attended the ASHE conference in Spokane. We were exposed to a wide variety of unique student perspectives on the climate crisis at our parish parlor party, Envisioning the Future. And we also learned how to facilitate these important conversations in ways that can build a strong community by participating in the Council on the Uncertain Human Future. And through these events, we've learned a lot about Swarthmore's perspectives on the climate crisis. We'll briefly go over some of our conclusions in the next few slides.
There are a few key takeaways that we got from students, faculty, and staff at Swarthmore College. The first is how much our community cares about this issue. And we can see that in the fact that the majority of members associate strong emotions with the climate crisis. The second is that those emotions associated are overwhelmingly negative, with anxiety, anger, and fear as those most commonly selected, showing that the climate crisis strains the mental health of our community.
We also compiled a few takeaways from our conversations with students at our parish parlor party. We saw that students who we talked to were very concerned about climate change and its impact in the near future, and students are very aware of climate change's systemic causes and impacts. But sometimes, despite having a good understanding of the impacts of climate change, we don't incorporate that information into our visions of our own personal futures. And based on this feedback and what we heard from students, we designed the Climate Essentials course in order to bridge the gap between personal and global visions of the future, and to offer a community space that could inspire a shared sense of purpose in the face of the climate crisis. And the structure of the Climate Essentials course pilot, we held 5 sessions of the course. For most of the sessions, we invited in a guest speaker, and then after they spoke, we had time for discussion in small groups. At the beginning of the course, we aim to provide participants with a strong foundation of knowledge of climate science and policy. And then after that, we offered space for reflection on the implications of what we had learned. And finally, we discussed our takeaways from the course and future steps for what we could do next.
Our survey following Climate Essentials made it clear that we had reached that target of linking the global to the personal, with all respondents reporting some personal impact from climate change and nearly half reporting drastic personal impacts as a result of the climate crisis. The second point applies to both the Climate Essentials course and the Council on the Uncertain Human Future, and that is that community is at the center of this process from the beginning. People simply appreciate having the opportunity to voice their bottled-up concerns about the climate crisis and see that those thoughts are shared by the people around them.
So looking at some next steps for Swarthmore's climate community and for this project, for Climate Essentials, we plan to offer more iterations of the course starting next year. We want to have various entrance points so that we can welcome in people with different levels of experience in this type of conversation. Similarly, we want to expand offerings of the Council on the Uncertain Human Future on campus. We've had a variety of people involved in our project who have been trained as conveners for the Council, and we plan to offer a lot of Council sessions next year that could be a variety of time commitments so that they're as accessible as possible. And in order to expand these 2 events on campus, we hope that the college will institute a year on climate, and that these 2 events can be key parts of that.
Finally, in the feedback that we received over the year, by far, the thing that participants asked from us the most was concrete, actionable next steps. They were so inspired by these courses and yet had little avenues through which to direct their action. In meeting this need, we hope that future climate community PSRFs will establish relationships with local organizations and provide those immediate, actionable next steps.
What I will take away from this project is that I feel motivated to have these tough conversations on a larger scale. Right now, we're not seeing the action that is desperately needed. We're facing an existential threat, and we're going to need to change the way we do things. I believe that the conversations we've had this year can be a great first step as we discuss how our way of life needs to change and how we can thrive in the world that comes next.
First, this year, I was so grateful to be a part of the creative process from starting from nothing and building a course and a community around climate change. Secondly, the Zoom camera I'm looking into right now has me thinking that right now, as we recover economically from the ravages of coronavirus, we must do so in a way that is environmentally sustainable. Now must be the time to act. This project was built from the beginning with community at the center. None of this would have been possible without our community collaborators that helped us along the way. So thank you all so much.
And if anyone has any questions that remain unanswered after the end of presentations today, we invite you to reach out to us by email. And lastly, we just want to thank all of you for sticking around till the end and listening to our presentation.
Thank you so much, Atticus and Declan. For all of you still in attendance, we strongly encourage you to stick around for the short question and answer panel, and especially because we have a fantastic keynote speaker, Kamala Enos, who will take up just another 5 to 10 minutes of your time, but it will be so worth it, I promise you. So please stick around for the next 15 or so minutes. First and foremost, I'd like to turn it over to Brenna for the last time to do one last panel Q&A. Brenna?
Thank you. So our first question is for Lucy. It's from Mark, and the question is, can Chester Semester's deep networks survive or even flourish in light of the COVID-19 restrictions on in-person learning and community engagement?
Can you repeat the first half of that question?
Sure. So the question is, can Chester Semester's deep networks survive or even flourish in light of the COVID-19 restrictions on in-person learning and community engagement?
Yeah, so this is definitely something that I've thought a lot about. I think personally, like over, I've been a Chester Semester Fellow for the past, year and a half, and now Chester Semester PSRF, and having to leave campus was definitely jarring. So even like from a student's perspective, like Chester Semester is, that there are obviously going to be ruptures because that in-person connection is no longer there. But I think when we're thinking about deep connections, it's so much, the scope is so much broader than, one semester. I think this semester it's looking at how can, is there something that we can do remotely? How can we support you? And that's a conversation that happens between students and mentors. I know that I've been talking to some of the Chester Semester Fellows this semester, and they've been doing some work remotely. So I think it's, there are moments where it's going to be maintaining, and there are moments that are going to be growing and engaging deeply. And that just depends on the capacity of everyone in the room. And so I think absolutely, as long as, the engagement is still there.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Chantel and Tyler. And the question is, could you tell us a little bit more about what your proposed waste label changes are, and any goals that accompany those changes?
Yeah. Go ahead, Chantal.
I'll let you talk about it.
Okay. Well, one thing that we were hoping to do, and we got some interesting feedback about this, was like, what are different ways that we can center the labeling to not just be its current system of this is like what goes where, which we have found, at least given the results of the waste characterization study, that a lot of people aren't following like basic recycling. There's a lot of cans and cardboard and paper that ends up going into the garbage, and vice versa. But how do we like really center it around the purpose of why people are doing it, instead of like still having that process of this is where everything goes, but really like in making an emphasis on the why this is happening. And we like thought about like different imagery of like centering the folks who are the most impacted by this, but then we also got like some interesting feedback on how does this like reinforce negative stereotypes about these people, and why are we using like their trauma to be galvanizing forces for folks to want to do the right thing. So so we kind of like just pause that for a little bit, and we're like constructively thinking about what are other ways that we can do this, and by just like putting up language, should we have visuals and language, should it just be visuals? So not having like the in-depthness of having the context there with it may actually engender more harm to the communities that we're trying to help. So in short, it would be to make sure that the why of why people need to be diverting by composting, recycling is there, and also an emphasis on just like using less and reduction being put into signs in like our cafes on campus, in sharples and other spaces where people are consuming like general goods of the campus.
Awesome, thank you, Tyler. So next I'll go to Sasha. So there was a question from Mark about sort of how can the Swarthmore College we know and love, for lack of a better term, die with grace and move on into this new world that we might not even understand yet?
Yeah, so one way I've thought about how we might start to think about what we need to do has been this like disinvest, invest framework. So where we start with the question of what are we doing every single day? Like where are we channeling our energy and resources on a regular basis? And then to specifically identify like what of what we're doing doesn't actually contribute to growing the wisdom and knowledge, skills and relationships that are needed to thrive in a climate change world, and what of what we're doing actually does. And then asking, to what extent can we disinvest from what doesn't serve us and invest in what does? So what are the behaviors and practices that don't contribute to what's needed that are possible to disinvest from right now at the moment? And what are the behaviors and practices that do contribute to what's needed that are possible to invest more in right now?
Awesome, thank you, Sasha. And then finally, over to Declan and Atticus. Could you give us a sense of how many people were able to attend your course? And could you also speak to the current student conception of the climate crisis?
Yeah, so for the first question, we had around 40 to 50 people sign up initially for the course. And we were very, very happy to see that there was so much demand for it. And I would also add that even after we went remote and we had 2 remote sessions at the end, we still were seeing a pretty good turnout, even despite the circumstances. So that was another encouraging thing to see.
And I can speak to that second half of that question, which was additional views on student perspectives. Another survey that we launched in the fall semester included 110 student responses, and we asked them a little bit about what they thought the biggest causes and effects of the climate crisis were. And as part of like the top 3 causes that we saw were business activity, government negligence, and then the third was personal lifestyles. So that tells you a little bit about how much students are already engaged in this topic, in that they don't view personal lifestyles as the top. They really have a systemic understanding of this issue. And that was really interesting to us, I think, in the fall semester, finding that information out.
Awesome, thank you both. Just as a reminder, there are a few questions left in the chat, so please go and type your answers there. And I just want to say a final thank you to all of our presenters and all of our participants. Your presentations were wonderful and your questions were insightful and fabulous. So thank you for asking good things. And with that, I will turn it over to Kyle to begin our closing.
Thank you so much, Brenna. So before we close, I'd like you to again stick around for a closing keynote. I'd like to reintroduce Aurora Winslade, our Director of Sustainability and co-instructor of the PSRF program this year, back to the stage to introduce our closing keynote speaker. Aurora?
Thank you, Kyle. And before I introduce Kamala Enos, I just want to say a huge congratulations to all of our PSRF fellows, our senior fellows. You've done an amazing job. David Singleton from the Board of Managers commented in the chat that he's attended all 4 years and it just keeps getting better and better. And I have to agree, you all just continue to inspire us with the hard work, the dedicated work, your insights, your critiques, and your creativity. And I also want to give a special thank you to Kyle Richmond Crossett and Brenna Leary, our 2 Engaged Scholarship and Sustainability Fellows, who have made this year such a success and really put a ton of work behind the scenes to make this transition to the virtual environment so seamless. Thank you so much. What an incredible, incredible job you did. And just being on to make this all work. So I know everyone is clapping. So it's my pleasure to introduce Kamuela. You know, many of you saw him in the short video from Devin Walls. Kamuela has been an incredible source of inspiration in my life. He is currently the Director of Indigenous Innovation, and it's a new position that's been created for the University of Hawaii system. Prior to that, he was the Director of Social Enterprise at Meadow Organic Farms. It was in that role that I first met him when he came to University of California, Santa Cruz, when I was Director of Sustainability there, and shared the incredible work that Meadow Organic Farms is doing to bring youth from Waianae community through the educational process and through an empowerment process and leadership development and a vision for connecting from the indigenous wisdom of generations and a forward-thinking vision of how to create the world that we want to live in. And earlier there was a question about the carbon footprint of Swarthmore going to Hawaii, which I think Oswaldo spoke to really eloquently. There's a lot that we can learn from communities like Hawaii. And I think we found that when Kamu came last December as part of a delegation from Hawaii, along with Paul Hawken, and help us make sense and sense-making out of these very strange and uncertain, increasingly acceleratingly uncertain times that we're in. So Kamu, we're really grateful that you are zooming in from Hawaii to speak to us. And I know you got to see a few of these presentations, and we welcome your reflections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahalo for being here.
Can you guys hear me okay? Thumbs up.
You sound great.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Aloha to my Swarthmore Ohana, especially to those that I had a chance to meet when they came out to Hawaii. You know, I don't have that much to add. I think the voices of students are the most important voices right now. The young adults and old souls that they are, I will be carrying forth the mantle of change. What I will say relative to what I heard in the deep passion that are not just reflected in the presentations, but I saw when a cohort of Swarthmore staff and student came to Hawaii, and along with family from family from Chester, to spend time with us in our communities and learn with us was something I think a lot about as a first world indigenous. Like, I can talk about being Hawaiian all I want, but you know, I have an earpod and I'm using technology. So I think we have our footprint as indigenous people in first world countries, quote unquote, is as big as anybody else's, and we're complicit. So we have to be really thoughtful about it. But what I think a lot about it is like, it's the height of first world privilege to ask why things change and why things are hard, when for the rest of the world, change and hardships is part of what life is. And I often land on this notion that we came up with a while ago about emotional sovereignty. We talk a lot as Native people around political sovereignty, then we moved to food sovereignty, but we kind of landed on emotional sovereignty, in that we have to be able to discern our own pain and do the things that we need to do it, so that we're in the daily work of restoration. That pain has its home. And I'm going to be a little blunt. We have to turn bullshit into fertilizer so we know how to process it. So it's something that feeds us and drives us forward versus limits us and keeps us, you know, in a lot of stuck. And we conflate that stuckness with the world around us and systems, and we bring that to the places we go, and we end up doing more harm than good. One of the biggest things I'll say in light of everything we're learning now and the brilliance of the students that are that are responding to it in Swarthmore and Hawaii. But from Hawaii's perspective, especially from Native Hawaiians, we're talking from your past as well as your future. Native Hawaiians have lived through huge loss of life through collapse, population collapse due to imported illness. And we've also watched our landscapes get denuded and eroded. And I think now the work that Ma'o and hopefully through my new office can show is like what it looks like on the other side of that, and how you have to meet that with a sense of agency and a sense of responsibility, but also a sense of joy and joyful participation. And like the challenge that you were born into for your generation is ultimately going to save you and keep you from mixing your trauma in with the work that needs to happen. And joy does not mean happiness. I've found that joy is what I've had someone define joy to me is when happiness gets the shit kicked out of it and it stands up and decides to still be happy. You're going to be joyful. You have an understanding of the pain and the struggle of the world, but you choose to meet it with a sense of not being diminished by it, but being hopeful, and a different kind of hopeful. So I saw a lot of that today. I'll just leave with the last thing. For students and faculty, why it was important for us to be in relationship with each other. We all need to be each other's champions in different places. And the word intersectionality is very interesting because it means how do we understand, be self-aware of where we are in the world around us, and how do we do that in a way where it's informed by deep listening, deep participation, deep reflection, but then grounded by doing something tangible that you can measure to make things better. And the rush to get to the outcome cannot diminish the role of the relationships and the processes that have to be in place. And this was the underpinning value of like Native Hawaiian communities, because we had to be trapped on an island for 1,000 years or so in a valley. We had to be able to work within tightly networked groups of people, especially people we didn't like. And we had to learn how to listen to people we didn't like, but find their humanity and find ways that we could turn them in Hawaiian to what we call ho'apaio, because we didn't have words for enemies. We had a partner in struggle, intimate through struggle. And I wish that for all of us, that we can be intimate with the struggle we face and see it as something that is generative. As Native Hawaiians, we've lived through things like this, not at this scale, but we've lived through it and it made us better. But it deeply haunted us too. And how we can not better in the sense of like, we're happy that we lived through it, but by going through challenge and having, as is the human condition, and having the right frameworks to meet it, it allowed us to be reflective, resilient, and be deeply committed to future generations because we know pain. And we hope that for all of you listening, as students who are part of this cohort, and as faculty and even community members, if any community members of Chester out there listening, we deeply appreciate all of this work. We stand in solidarity with you. We see the value of it because you see the value in us. And I want to thank Aurora for looping me in to be able to listen and to continue. We make a commitment, especially from the University of Hawaii, to be in relationship with all of you, especially as we rebuild the future that we want to see. So I'll just close there and extend my deep thanks to everyone. Aloha.
Thank you so much, Kamu. And also thank you to everyone who made this event and the PSRF program run smoothly. That includes Aurora, Carr, Joy, Brenna, Peter, Elizabeth, Chief Gentle Moon, Terrence. Thank you guys. Also thanks to the project mentors, sustainability sages, project board members, faculty advisors, friends of the college who support our work. Really, truly are making a difference, and I think you saw that today. Congratulations to our PSRF fellows, especially our wonderful seniors, Jasmine, Sasha, Max, Rachel, and Seneca. Best of luck in whatever you do next. Thanks also, and finally to you, our audience, for sticking around to the end. Last thing before we leave, if you have questions, comments, or want to know about any of the presentations in more detail, feel free to email us at sustainability@swarthmore.edu. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy your afternoon. Goodbye.
Hey Cal, is there anything that I should stay on for? I figured we should probably save the responses in the chat, right? Okay, I've saved the chat. I'm not sure how to save the responses, but I'm gonna head out now. Thanks, Cal.